Chapter 1256. Dongfang Jie, scram back to Eastern Heaven City. Your marriage with Miss Chung is impossible. Nie Tian did not dare to talk nonsense with Dongfang Jie and opened his mouth to say solemnly. Dongfang father and son came all the way to propose marriage. Clearly, it was like a weasel paying respects to a chicken, harboring no good intentions. As long as Nie Tian was there, this marriage would never work out. Who do you think you are, to also dare to say such words? Dongfang Jie smiled cold, looking at Nie Tian with a dark face. Although he was apprehensive of Nie Tian's strength, he believed that the latter absolutely did not dare to kill him. Get lost! Nie Tian's face suddenly fell, and he roared angrily. His entire body's aura pounced out like raging waves, directly sweeping Dongfang Jie up and throwing him high up into the sky. Stinking brat, what are you doing? Dongfang Jie was frightened until his face was as white as paper, crying out in alarm. Dongfang Jie, even if I can't kill you right now, I can still do it to cripple you. Nie Tian smiled sinisterly, releasing a majestic sword intent around him, directly crushing toward Dongfang Jie. Although this sword intent could not take Dongfang Jie's life, it was sufficient to directly cripple him. Is this person mad? When the crowd saw this scene, their gazes suddenly fell, secretly crying out in alarm in their hearts. Dongfang Jie was Dong Huang's son. If he was crippled by someone, how could Dong Huang let it go? Even if Nie Tian had someone who could rival Dong Huang behind him, he cannot do this too, right? Stop! Right at the critical moment, a majestic, angry roar sounded out. Following that, an air-tearing force whistled out, directly descending, blocking the fatal blow for Dongfang Jie. Immediately, a gray-robed figure appeared and caught Dongfang Jie, landing firmly on the ground. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, then immediately looked at that gray-robed old man. Sensing that the other party's strength was actually 9th-level Heavenly Emperor, his gaze involuntarily trembled. This old man's strength was close to the pinnacle, sufficient to contend with Qin Changqi and Yin Gufeng, this kind of powerhouse. Elder Liu, Dongfang Jie was still in shock. Looking at the gray-robed old man in front of him, a hint of joy flickered in his eyes. Young master, are you all right? Lu Fangweng's divine sense swept past Dongfang Jie's body. Only after confirming that the latter was all right did he feel relieved. He had been ordered to protect Dongfang Jie, but he had felt that Dongfang Jie would not be in any danger in Divine Cold City, so he had left at the last minute. He had not expected that something would happen in such a short time. If something really happened to Dongfang Jie, Lu Fangweng would also be in trouble. Brat, who are you? Lu Fangweng's eyes darkened as he looked at Nie Tian and asked cold. Is there a need for you to know? Nie Tianling replied coldly. There was not a trace of panic in his eyes. Instead, he was very calm. Lu Fangweng was stunned for a moment. Then, he sensed Nie Tian's strength, and his eyes turned even darker. Clearly, he did not expect that Nie Tian's strength was actually so strong, actually reaching the 7th level of Heavenly Emperor. It seemed like his Sword Dao realm was also terrifyingly high. Looking at Nie Tian's age, he was only in his early 20s. He seemed to be a few years younger than Dongfang Jie. Such talent was truly shocking. Are you Lord Mo Qianjuan's disciple, or Lord Zhuqiansheng's disciple? Lu Fangweng was very calm. He did not attack, but asked. He had already heard that more than half a month ago, Mo Qianjun and Zhuqiansheng appeared in Tianwang City. Moreover, Nie Tian was a swordsman. Hence, he guessed that Nie Tian was their disciple. If Nie Tian did not have a strong backer behind him, how could he possibly dare to attack Dongfang Jie? Although Mo, Qianjun, and Zhuqiansheng were not the 9 emperors, their strength was not weaker than the 9 emperors. I know both of them, but I am not their disciple. I am their friend. Nie Tian replied indifferently. He could tell that Lu Fangweng was an extremely calm person. As long as he pointed it out, the latter would not attack. Friend, Lu Fangweng's eyes narrowed. This silver-haired swordsman who dared to say that he was a friend of the Sword Saint and the Sword Sovereign was not simple. Lu Fangweng could tell that Nie Tian's tone was very calm. It was as if he was speaking as an equal. This kind of aura cannot be faked. It needed to be supported by great strength. Young master, let's go. After thinking about it, Lu Fangweng decided that he could not attack. It was better to leave with Dongfang Jie. Fortunately, Dongfang Jie was only injured. Although his injury was a little serious, it was not a big problem. Leave. Dongfang Jie was stunned. He did not expect Lu Fangweng to let Nie Tian go so easily. However, he did not dare to go against Lu Fangweng's will. He could only glare at Nie Tian and said, "Brat, we will see." "All right." Nie Tian smiled faintly as he watched Lu Fangweng, Dongfang Jie, and the others leave. The onlookers were all dumbfounded. They looked at Nie Tian with incredulity on their faces. Who would have thought that an expert close to the peak would be driven away by a few words from Nie Tian? "Little white hair, you are too powerful." Cheng Ruoling looked as if she had just woken up from a dream. She looked at Nie Tian excitedly and said, "Even my parents did not dare to look down on that gray-robed old man, but he was scared away by you. How'd you do it?" Nie Tian laughed and said, "Fortunately, he left wisely. Otherwise, he would have ended up like Dongfang Jie." What do you mean?" Cheng Ruoling was stunned. She did not know what Nie Tian meant. Could it be that Nie Tian was stronger than Lu Fangweng? Nie Tian's eyes flickered. With his current strength, if he were to fight to the death with Lu Fangweng, the outcome would be uncertain. The reason why he was so confident was because there were other experts around. Big brother. Before Nie Tian could finish his sentence, a familiar voice rang out. A silhouette appeared and looked at Nie Tian with a smile. It was none other than Nie Tian's sworn brother, Long Outyin. In fact, Nie Tian had already noticed that Long Outyin was nearby. It was just that he had not come out yet. Long Outyin was a cunning brat. He had been hiding all this time, waiting for an opportunity. If Lu Fangweng really made a move against Nie Tian, Long Outyin would catch him off guard. Long Outyin's current strength was on par with Lu Fangweng. If he suddenly attacked, even if Lu Fangweng didn't die, he would at least lose a layer of skin. "Outyin." Nie Tian looked at Long Outyin and smiled. He did not expect that the latter would appear here. However, the next moment, Nie Tian's gaze turned to the other side. He smiled and said, "Old Du, you've been watching from the side for so long. Aren't you going to come out and say hello to an old friend?" Long Outyin was stunned. He did not know who Nie Tian was talking to. Before Nie Tian could finish his sentence, a cunning voice rang out. Then, a skinny old man in black appeared. His body was hunched, and his aura was concealed to the extreme. Ordinary people would not be able to detect his presence. "It's you." Cheng Ruoling could not help but scream when she saw the old man in black. He was the one who asked her to steal the giant iguana's egg. "Master Ao Jian, long time no see." However, the black-robed old man completely ignored Cheng Ruoling. He stared at Nie Tian with his eagle-like eyes and called out Nie Tian's name. "Old Du, it's really you." Nie Tian smiled. He had already guessed that it was Old Du who tempted Cheng Ruoling to steal the giant iguana. Now that it was confirmed, he was not surprised. Chapter 12:57. Previously, Nie Tian heard from Cheng Ruoling that she made a deal with an old man to exchange the giant iguana's egg for a spiritual pet. At that time, he had already guessed that the old man who made the deal with Cheng Ruoling was most likely Poison Emperor Du Danfeng. Only old freak Du would do such a ridiculous thing to trick a little girl to steal the giant iguana's egg for him. Du Danfeng being able to recognize Nie Tian was not strange at all, because Du Danfeng's identity was very special. He was a poison master. What was a poison master? It was a special group of pill masters that specialized in refining poison pills. Hence, they were called poison masters. Du Danfeng could actually become one of the 9 emperors by refining poison pills. This showed how powerful he was. Nie Tian guessed that Du Danfeng's strength was not below Pill Emperor Chen Xinwen's. With such strength, it was naturally not strange for him to be able to see through Nie Tian's real identity. What was more worth mentioning was that other than being a poison master, Du Danfeng's beast-taming skills were also at the peak of the Heaven Realm. It could be said that he was the strongest beast taming master in the heaven realm. According to rumors, Du Danfeng was collecting the 10 great beasts of the heaven realm. He wanted to gather all the 10 great beasts and make them his spiritual pets. Nie Tian had interacted with Du Danfeng in his previous life. Their relationship could even be said to be good. Nie Tian even helped the latter to subdue a rank 9 spiritual beast. Old freak Du, you clearly know that the little girl is Emperor Cold's daughter, yet you still let her steal the giant iguana's egg for you. Aren't you afraid that if something happens to her, Emperor Cold will fight with you? Nie Tian looked at Du Danfeng and said with a gloomy expression. If Du Danfeng was just fooling around, Nie Tian could still accept it. However, Cheng Ruoling's life was at stake. As a grandmaster, he naturally had to demand an explanation. Lord Ao Jian, this old man does not dare to joke around with Emperor Cold's daughter. Your starlight wings are so fast, and you save her before this old man could make a move. What can I do? Du Danfeng chuckled and said, the sword that you used on the giant iguana's head was not up to standard. It seems that your strength has not completely recovered. When Nie Tian heard Du Danfeng's words, his eyes involuntarily focused. It seemed like Du Danfeng had seen everything that had happened in the divine Frost Mountain range. He had been nearby at that time. Nie Tian could not help but laugh bitterly. It seemed that he had indeed been a busybody at that time. Perhaps Nie Tian was too focused on the earthen monitor lizard that he did not notice Du Danfeng's presence. Old freak Du, since you went to the divine Frost Mountain range, you must have obtained the giant iguana egg, right? Nie Tian said with a faint smile. Of course. Du Danfeng chuckled and said, but don't worry, I've already made an identical fake egg for the earthen monitor lizard. I guarantee that it won't be able to tell. Nie Tian couldn't help shaking his head with a smile. He naturally trusted Du Danfeng's methods. Now, Nie Tian had completely understood the entire situation. Du Danfeng was only using Cheng Ruoling to attract the earthen monitor iguana's attention. The real person who wanted to steal the monitor iguana's egg was him. Who would have thought that Cheng Ruoling would be so stubborn and refuse to hand over the egg no matter what? This had enraged the earthen monitor lizard and led to the previous scene. Du Danfeng also did not expect that Nie Tian would just happen to pass by and save Cheng Ruoling, saving him a lot of trouble. In truth, even if Nie Tian had not appeared, Cheng Ruoling would not have been in any danger. Du Danfeng would naturally have saved her. Cheng Ruoling only reacted at this time. Her pretty face stiffened slightly as she said angrily, little white hair, you know this old man? Little white hair? Du Danfeng was stunned. He then looked at Cheng Ruoling and laughed strangely. Little girl, do you know who he is to you? If your father heard what you said just now, then it would be troublesome. Be careful that he doesn't spank your little butt. Nie Tian's face darkened. After not seeing him for more than 100 years, old freak Du was still acting like an old man with no respect. Damned old man. What does it have to do with you who he is to me? Cheng Ruoling was not afraid at all. She said directly, your earthen monitor lizard's egg is already in your hands. Hurry up and give the little civet to this young lady. Du Danfeng raised his brows and chuckled. Little girl, I obtained the earthen monitor lizard's egg myself. It has nothing to do with you. Why should I give the little civet to you? Damned old man. Do you really think this young lady is a fool? You used me to attract the earthen monitor lizard's attention while you secretly stole the egg. If it wasn't for this young lady, you would have been torn to pieces by the earthen monitor lizard. Cheng Ruoling was not too stupid. She finally understood what was going on. All right, little girl. This old man is afraid of you. Du Danfeng was clearly playing with Cheng Ruoling. He chuckled, and a spirit pet pouch appeared in his hand. He threw it to Cheng Ruoling. Little civet. Cheng Ruoling caught the spirit pet pouch and opened it. A black kitten jumped out. It was very cute and blinked its big eyes. It jumped directly onto her shoulder, appearing very docile. And when Nie Tian saw the little black kitten, his eyes couldn't help but narrow. He said in surprise, it's actually a 9-tailed spirit cat. I didn't expect old freak Du to be so generous. The 9-tailed spirit cat was a very unique ninth-grade spirit beast. It had extremely strong perception, especially towards all kinds of spirit materials. It was even more terrifying than ordinary spirit material masters. Nietian originally thought that the little civet that Chung Ruoling mentioned was just an ordinary spirit pet. He didn't expect it to be a nine-tailed spirit cat. A giant monitor lizard's egg for a nine-tailed spirit cat. Chung Ruoling didn't lose out at all in this transaction. Damned old man, you are still trustworthy. This young lady will forgive you this time. Chung Ruoling was very happy after obtaining the nine-tailed spirit cat. Du Danfeng's pair of eagle-like eyes looked at Chung Ruoling, but there was a very strange smile on his face. Nietian noticed that there was something wrong with Du Danfeng's gaze. He suddenly realized something and said with astonishment, "Old freak, you can't be thinking of accepting a disciple, right?" Nietian remembered that Du Danfeng had a nine-tailed spirit cat himself. Moreover, it had already grown 9 tails. It specialized in identifying all kinds of spirit materials for him. At this moment, Du Danfeng was giving Chung Ruoling a young 9-tailed spirit cat. It was obviously to nurture a cooperative relationship between Chung Ruoling and the 9-tailed spirit cat. It seemed like Du Danfeng wanted to accept Chung Ruoling as a disciple. Nietian was a little surprised. Was there something special about Chung Ruoling? She could actually attract Du Danfeng's attention. Brother Nya, this lass is born with the myriad poison spirit vein. It would be a waste if she doesn't become a poison master. Du Danfeng chuckled and said to Nietian, myriad poison spirit vein. Nietian was stunned for a moment. His divine sense swept across Chung Ruoling's body. The holographic divine rune silently sensed the latter's spirit vein. As expected, he found something unusual. An ordinary person's spirit vein would be the color of flesh and blood. It was slightly white and bright because they absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. However, Chung Ruoling's spirit vein was actually black in color. It gave off an extremely cold feeling. Nietian had never heard of the myriad poison spirit vein. However, he guessed that it should be an extremely rare spiritual body of heaven and earth. How could it be something simple to make Du Danfeng so interested? Chapter 1258. Nietian immediately calmed down and looked at the overjoyed Chung Ruoling. The latter clearly did not know that Du Danfeng had other intentions towards her. Old freak Du, you saw it too. Dong Wang brought his son to the Divine Cold Palace to propose marriage. His intentions are not pure. If your disciple is snatched away by Dong Wang, it will be troublesome. Nietian looked at Du Danfeng and transmitted his voice with ill intentions. Brother Nya, with the two of us here, do you think Dongfang Ilan's proposal will succeed? Du Danfeng chuckled. He had already made up his mind that he would definitely take Chung Ruoling as his disciple. His original plan was to trick this disciple of his even if he had to. But now that he had met Nietian, it seemed like he could change his method of taking in a disciple. Nietian was a sensible person and naturally knew what it meant if Chung Ruoling became Du Danfeng's disciple. Du Danfeng was a famous old monster in the heaven realm. He had never accepted a disciple in his entire life. His sudden interest in Chung Ruoling was enough to show how terrifying the 10,000 poison spiritual vein was. If Chung Ruoling could become Du Danfeng's disciple, her future would be limitless. In the near future, another empress would appear in the heaven realm. Nietian was 100% in favor of Chung Ruoling following Du Danfeng. In any case, it was much better than that Dongfang Jie. All right, Nietian smiled faintly and said, then let's make a trip to the Divine Cold Palace together. Originally, Nietian was worried that if he went to the Divine Cold Palace and met Dongfang Ilang and his son, he would be at a disadvantage. Now that he had Du Danfeng and Long Outyin, he was definitely the stronger party. This time, Dongfang Ilang and his son really went back to where they came from. Immediately, the few of them did not delay any further and headed straight to the Divine Cold Palace. Along the way, Nietian and Long Outyin talked about some things. Long Outyin was very surprised that Nietian's strength could increase so quickly in such a short period of time. It seemed like Nie Tian's true battle power was not weaker than his. After Long Ao Yin had bid farewell to Nie Tian, he had been investigating the truth behind his father's death. Unfortunately, he had found nothing. With no other choice, he returned to the Divine Cold Palace, hoping to run into Nie Tian, because he knew that Nie Tian would definitely come to the Divine Cold Palace. Coincidentally, the two brothers met in Divine Cold City. Since Long Ao Yin can't find out the truth behind Lord Long Zhao's death, why don't we let the people of the Heaven Wasteland Hall investigate this matter? Nie Tian suddenly remembered that the Heaven Wasteland Hall still owed him two things, which he could hand over to the Heaven Wasteland Hall to handle. Old Man Heaven Wasteland had lived for so long, and there were so many disciples in the Heaven Wasteland Hall. It should be easier to investigate some old matters. All right, I wonder if Tsang Shanxue is in the Divine Cold Palace? Nie Tian once again recalled that if there were no accidents, Tsang Shanxue should also be in the Divine Cold Palace at this time, secretly protecting Mo Rushi and Cher. After a while, Nie Tian and the others arrived at the Divine Cold Palace. Qingju, it's been hard on you these few years. Nie Tian looked at the majestic palace in front of him, a refined and handsome face appearing in his mind, and he could not help feeling emotional. He had already heard from Long Ao Yin that Chengju's Yuan meridians were crippled by Luo Chenhun back then. Later on, although Chengju's Yuan meridians were repaired through Cold Emperor's heaven-defying method, his current strength was not high, seemingly only at the first level of Heavenly Emperor cultivation. Chengju's talent was considered good among Nie Tian's 9 disciples. Barring no accidents, even if he was not at his peak strength at this time, he was not far from it. One had to know that Chengju was someone who possessed the heaven-ranked spirit body, the Dragon Sun Destruction physique. The later the heaven-ranked spirit body, the more terrifying it was. Big brother, let's go in. Long Ao Yin knew that Nie Tian thought of Chengju. His expression also darkened a little, and he said with a sigh. Nie Tian nodded slightly and prepared to enter. Little white feather, when you see my parents later, don't talk nonsense, got it? Cheng Ruoling reminded Nie Tian at this moment, clearly not wanting Cold Emperor and Chengju to know that she went to the Divine Cold Mountain Range to steal the giant iguana eggs. Nie Tian pursed his lips slightly, and then said with a smile, Little girl, let me remind you out of goodwill, don't call me Little White Feather in front of your parents. Why? Cheng Ruoling's beautiful eyes froze, but then she said with a smug look, I'll call you Little White Feather later. Let's see what you can do to me. Little girl, no need for him to do anything to you. Your father won't let you off. Du Danfeng snickered and said in his heart. Chengju was a steady person and valued the etiquette between master and disciple very much. If she heard her own daughter calling Nie Tian Little White Feather over and over again, who knew what expression she would have? Nie Tian also smiled speechlessly. Cheng Ruoling was indeed a little too unruly. This kind of little girl should stay by old freak Du's side and be taught a good lesson. After entering the Divine Cold Palace, the surrounding guards all greeted Cheng Ruoling. However, they seemed to be a little afraid of this young miss and avoided her like the plague. Nie Tian shook his head slightly. It seemed that these guards had been bullied by Cheng Ruoling a lot. I wonder if Cheng Ruoling has gotten to know Mo Rushi and Cher yet. Little girl, 2 girls came to the Divine Cold Palace a while ago. Do you know them? Nie Tian finally couldn't help but ask as he walked. Are you talking about Big Sister Rushi and Little Sister Cher? Cheng Ruoling giggled, but then she frowned and said, How do you know them? I'm their friend, Nie Tian said indifferently. Oh right. Cheng Ruoling suddenly realized something and exclaimed, Little white hair, I still don't know your name? He's called Nie Tian. Du Danfeng couldn't bear to listen anymore and said in a deep voice, Damn old man, this young miss is asking Little White Hair. Why are you interrupting? If it wasn't for your age, this young miss would definitely slap your mouth. Cheng Ruoling glared at Du Danfeng with a proud expression. Du Danfeng was so angry that he blew his beard and glared at her. He was one of the 9 emperors, but he was actually reprimanded by a little girl. If this matter were to spread, his reputation would fall into the gutter. However, in order to accept a good disciple, Du Danfeng decided to endure it. Nie Tian's expression also didn't look good. He could only treat it as a child's words. Long Out Yin chuckled and glanced at Du Danfang. He gave Chung Ruoling a thumbs up and said, "Little girl, well scolded," as expected of the daughter of Cold Tiger. Cold Tiger was naturally the nickname that Long Out Yin gave to Cold Emperor. A thought suddenly occurred to Chung Ruoling, and she turned to Nie Tian and asked, "Little White Feather, Big Sister Rushi, and Little Sister Shui often mention the same name. Don't tell me it's you?" Nie Tian was speechless. He already said that he was Mo Rushi and Cher's friend. Could it be that the two of them knew multiple Nie Tians? "Linger, you're back." At this moment, a slightly low voice rang out, and a figure in white walked over. When Nie Tian heard this voice, his eyes trembled violently. When he looked at the figure, his expression instantly froze. Dressed in spotless white clothes, with a handsome appearance that was gentle like jade, the figure that appeared before him was none other than Cheng Ju. "Linger." The next moment, another voice sounded and a woman in purple appeared. Her beauty was peerless and could topple cities. Although the woman in purple had a serious expression, her gaze towards Chung Ruoling was filled with unconcealable love. Beside the woman stood a familiar figure. It was Ju Ruoling, the meridian-less body that Nie Tian had seen before. Chapter 1259. Cheng Ju and Mao Xianglong's figures appeared and walked directly toward Nie Tian and the others. Nie Tian looked at Cheng Ju with a burning gaze. His gaze gradually became complicated, and there was clearly something warm flickering in it. After 100 years, Nie Tian had experienced this scene more than once. However, facing Cheng Ju, his mood was somewhat different. Cheng Ju was different from Li Yi and Tang Hao. He had endured too much pain, and he was a gentle person who would never show his pain. That made Nie Tian feel especially guilty. Cheng Ju walked over in a white robe. His long robe fluttered in the air. Originally, all his eyes were on Chung Ruoling, but when he sensed that another pair of eyes was looking at him, he could not help but frown and look at the owner of that pair of eyes. Cheng Ju sensed a familiar aura, but he saw an extremely unfamiliar face. The silver-haired young man in front of him had a grave and stern expression. At a glance, he could tell that he was a man of unswerving determination. However, his eyes could not stop trembling. That familiar gaze made Cheng Ju's entire body tremble. "Mr. Nie Tian." At that moment, Ju, who was standing behind Mao Xianglong, could not help but call out in surprise when she recognized Nie Tian. Nie Tian. Hearing that name again, Cheng Ju's pupils suddenly constricted, and his eyes immediately trembled violently. He suddenly saw Long Out Yin, who was standing next to Nie Tian, and the latter nodded at him. At that moment, Cheng Ju instantly understood that the silver-haired young man in front of him was none other than his teacher, Nie Tian. "Dad, what's wrong?" Chung Ruoling saw Cheng Ju's expression change. His eyes were trembling and sparkling. She immediately had a look of confusion, not knowing what had happened. The Frost Empress's beautiful eyes also flickered, but she immediately understood, and her entire body immediately stiffened. "Teacher." In the next moment, Cheng Ju could no longer control himself. He took a step forward, and the man directly knelt on both knees. His eyes surged with boiling hot tears. Cheng Ju had already learned from Long Out Yin that Nie Tian was not dead. He had been waiting for Nie Tian to find him, and had even imagined the scene of the master and disciple meeting thousands of times. But when the moment really came, he was still so excited that he couldn't control himself. "Cheng Ju, stand up." Nie Tian suddenly reacted. He stepped forward and quickly helped Cheng Ju up. At this time, Cheng Ju was already a husband and a father. It was really inappropriate for her to bow to him in such a public place. "Teacher, it's really you." Cheng Ju was extremely moved, and 2 streams of hot tears rolled down her determined face. "Cheng Ju, I'm back." Nie Tian nodded heavily, and his voice was actually slightly choked up as he said with a trembling voice, "It's been hard on you all these years. Master Ao Jian, you're really still alive." Mao Xianglong said with a trembling face. Chung Ruoling and Zhu Ruo'er watched from the side, completely stunned. Their two small mouths were wide open, but they couldn't say a word for a long time. They couldn't figure out the situation at all. Who was Nie Tian? Why did Chung Ju kneel? And even call him teacher? Father, you must have mistaken me for someone else. Why did you call this little white-haired teacher? Chung Ruoling finally couldn't help but exclaim and said with a puzzled face. Linger. Chung Ju's face suddenly sank. He glared at Chung Ruoling and said in a deep voice, Quickly kowtow to your grandmaster. Kowtow? Chung Ruoling exclaimed. Her voice became sharp and thin, and her little face was extremely surprised. She said, You've mistaken me for someone else. Why do you want me to kowtow? Listen to your father. Unexpectedly, Mao Xianglong's face also sank. Even though she doted on her daughter, some etiquette was still necessary. She knew that her husband valued the etiquette between master and disciple the most, so it was not too much to ask Chung Ruoling to kowtow. Forget it. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He would not use his seniority to oppress others. Moreover, he didn't care whether she kowtowed or not. Teacher, it's all because I didn't discipline Ling well, causing her to be too stubborn and mischievous. Chung Ju bowed and said with a face full of guilt. However, Nie Tian smiled and raised his eyebrows. He then glanced at Du Danfeng. In the future, this old monster will discipline Chung Ruoling and guarantee that the latter will be obedient. Lord Ao Jian, let's go to the main hall to talk. Mao Xianglong responded and said faintly. Nie Tian nodded slightly. He also wanted to know how Chung Ju had survived all these years. Speaking of which, Chung Ju's situation was considered good. At least, it was much better than Han Fei, Zhang Jianqing, and the others. After a while, everyone arrived at the Divine Cold Hall. Mao Xianglong originally wanted to let Nie Tian sit in the main seat, but the latter refused and casually found a seat to sit down. Towards some things that did not matter, Nie Tian's attitude had always been indifferent. Teacher, how had you been these few years? Chung Ju's gaze looked over and said solemnly. Nie Tian smiled faintly and briefly recounted his experiences. 100 years of rebirth, only using 5 to 6 years' time to grow from a cripple with shattered essence meridians to a 7th-level heavenly emperor martial artist. Lord Ao Jian is indeed well-deserving of being the Heaven Realm's #1 person. Du Danfeng could not help laughing after hearing Nie Tian's words. Heaven Realm's #1 person. This title came from Snow Emperor's evaluation. It was rumored that back then, when Nie Tian stepped onto the top of the Heavenly Sword Wind Cloud list at the age of 100, Snow Emperor gave his evaluation. Looking back at the world, his aura like a mountain, no one could rival him. Ever since then, Nie Tian was known as the Heaven Realm's #1 person. Although the strength of Mo, Qianjun, Zhou Qiansheng, and the rest were not beneath Nie Tian, their ages were much older than Nie Tian. Just in terms of martial Dao talent, saying that Nie Tian was the Heaven Realm's #1 person was not overboard. You're that Heaven Realm's #1 war god, Nie Tian. All the way until this time, Chung Ruoling finally seemed to have woken up from a dream, crying out with a shocked face. Nie Tian nodded slightly, smiling but did not speak. Zhu Ruo'er was also shocked, looking at Nie Tian with a look of astonishment. She finally understood why Nie Tian dared to be so domineering when he appeared previously, even looking down on factions like the Heaven Murder Sect and the Sea-Breaking Sect. He could even make her become Frost Emperor's disciple with one sentence. It turned out that his identity was actually this shocking. Linger, only we know about this matter. We absolutely mustn't leak it to outsiders, understood? Mao Xianglong's beautiful eyes flickered as she exhorted. Yes. Chung Ruoling and Zhu Ruo'er hurriedly nodded, their faces still shocked and could not recover for a long time. Following that, Chung Ju recounted her own experience. In the end, her expression was abnormally ugly. She said, eldest senior brother and second senior brother are suffering in the horizon purgatory, but I can't do anything. I'm really a failure as a junior brother. Chung Ju, this is not your fault. It's all because I, as their teacher, have implicated you. Nie Tian shook his head slightly, his expression solemn. He knew that with Cheng Ju's personality, as long as she had the slightest idea, she would definitely save Han Fei and Zhang Jianqing. However, he could not even protect himself, so how could he talk about saving them? Nie Tian was a little puzzled. Why did Frost Emperor protect Cheng Ju in the first place? Chapter 1260. Lord Ao Jian, there are some things that I really can't tell you. Mao Xianglong seemed to know what Nie Tian was thinking. She frowned and said in a deep voice, many things were kept secret between the 9 emperors and could not be told to anyone else. Nie Tian nodded slightly and looked at Du Danfeng. The latter smiled helplessly. Everyone knew that the 9 emperors represented the highest authority in the heaven realm, but they did not know that the 9 emperors had their own difficulties. After knowing these things, Nie Tian was very satisfied. He had already expected that it would be impossible to find out the truth of what happened back then. How are Rushi and Cher? I want to see them, Nie Tian said, and prepared to find Mo Rushi and Cher. They're doing well. Xianglong has placed them in the safest place in the Divine Cold Palace. Qingju stood up and said respectfully. Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He wanted to say that Mo Rushi was the only mistress, but after thinking for a while, he decided not to. Qingju was an honest person. She must have been influenced by Long Ao Yin's 2 sisters-in-law. Lord Frost Emperor. Just as Nie Tian was about to leave the hall, a voice rang out from above, resounding in the spacious hall. It was exceptionally ear-piercing. Hearing this voice, Nie Tian could not help but frown. His face was a little gloomy. Then, a silhouette in embroidered clothes appeared with a smile on his face. However, it made him look even more annoying. Miss Ling is back. It's time to discuss her marriage with Jia. The silhouette in embroidered clothes strode into the hall. His tone was arrogant and his eyes were arrogant. He looked down on everyone. Dongfang Ichiro. Nie Tian's heart trembled as he looked at the newcomer. This person was none other than one of the 9 emperors, Dongfang Ilong. At this moment, there were 2 people standing behind Dongfang Ilong. One was Lu Fangwen and the other was Dongfang Jia. As Dongfang Ilong spoke, he entered the main hall. At this moment, he suddenly discovered that there were other people beside the Frost Emperor. His gaze flickered for a moment, and then immediately locked onto Du Danfeng. Dongfang Ilong was taken aback at first, then his heart tightened. He thought, why is this old poison here too? But in the next moment, Dongfang Ilong laughed and said, Lord Poison Emperor is also here. I really didn't expect this. Surprisingly, 3 of the 9 great emperors have gathered in such a small hall. If I hadn't been so clear-headed, I would have thought that the 9 great emperors were in Shuiyu Shrine. The 9 emperors' consensus. Nie Tian frowned when he heard this term and made a mental note of it. It was obvious that Dongfang Ilong's attention was completely focused on Du Danfeng, and he did not notice Nie Tian's presence at all. It was no wonder. Compared to Du Danfeng, Nie Tian was indeed a little inconspicuous. Dong Wang, you seem a little unhappy to see me. Du Danfeng chuckled. Then, he pointed at Nie Tian and said, this old man believes that you will be even more unhappy when you see him. Brad, it's you. At this moment, before Dongfang Ilong could say anything, Dongfang Jia, who was behind him, immediately recognized Nie Tian. He let out a shrill shout, and his eyes flashed with a cold light. Jia, do you know this person? Dongfang Ilong was stunned for a moment. He actually did not recognize Nie Tian and could not help but frown. Father, this is the brat who injured him. He even called out father's name in front of everyone. Dongfang Jia looked at Nie Tian with a sinister expression, as if he wanted to skin him alive. Dongfang Ilong's brows suddenly sank, and his expression changed. He stared coldly at Nie Tian and said in a deep voice, Stinking brat, you injured my son and still dare to come to the Divine Cold Palace. You really have guts. Nie Tian was completely unafraid of Dongfang Ilong's threat. He smiled and said, from what Lord Dongwang said, it seems that the Divine Cold Palace belongs to you. If I remember correctly, this should be the residence of Lord Cold Emperor. What does my coming here have to do with you? You coming here has nothing to do with me, but you injure my son. That has something to do with me. Dongfang Yilong's eyes trembled. He did not expect a young warrior to completely ignore his oppressive aura and even dare to speak to him as an equal. Inexplicably, Dongfang Yilong felt a sense of humiliation. Dong Wang. At this moment, Mao Xianglong suddenly spoke and said, "This is the Divine Cold Palace, not your East Emperor Palace. This gentleman is my friend. Please show some respect." Dongfang Yilong was stunned when he heard Emperor Cold Emperor's words. The latter was obviously trying to protect Nie Tian. "Lord Cold Emperor, this person injured my son. I am seeking justice for my son. Is this too much?" Dongfang Yilong said in a low voice with a gloomy face. "Seeking justice for your mother." At this moment, before Mao Xianglong could say anything, Long Outyin stood up and stared at Dongfang Yilong coldly. He said, "Dongfang Yilong, it was your son who provoked me first. My big brother was only forced to fight back. My big brother has already shown mercy. Otherwise, your son would have been a corpse long ago. It's fine if you don't know how to appreciate my kindness, but you still want to seek justice? Seek justice for your mother." "You?" Dongfang Yilong's eyes froze, and he was speechless. He didn't expect that someone would suddenly appear here and curse at him, not putting him in his eyes at all. "You are Long Outyin." The next moment, Dongfang Yilong suddenly recognized that the person in front of him was Long Outyin. He was stunned and said, "Didn't you get killed by Great Emperor Chenin? You didn't die. Die your mother." Long Outyin was completely unreasonable. He scolded, "Aren't you here to propose a marriage for your bastard son to little girl Chung? Let me give you a piece of advice. Get out of here as soon as possible. There's no chance." Dongfang Yilong's eyes suddenly widened. He looked at Long Outyin in disbelief. He did not expect the latter to be so arrogant and scold everything. Sigh. At this moment, Du Danfeng, who was watching from the side, laughed and said, "A wicked person will be dealt with by another wicked person. A treacherous person like Dongfang Yilong should be left to a madman like Long Outyin to deal with. Long Outyin, you're courting death." Dongfang Yilong could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. He let out a deep roar, and his aura surged violently. He struck out with his palm, and the vast and mighty aura was like a raging wave, roaring and crashing toward Long Outyin. Dongfang Yilong was one of the 9 emperors, a peak expert in the heaven realm. Under his palm, the space trembled and the entire hall started to shake. "Be careful." Upon seeing this, Nie Tian cried out. He was not sure if Long Outyin could withstand Dongfang Yilong's palm with his current strength. Chapter 1261. Boom! The moment Long Outyin's ghost bone of 8 desolation made his move, ghost energy filled the entire hall. Suddenly, an eerie aura enveloped the entire hall, and a violent aura spread out for thousands of meters. As Long Outyin's Yuan meridians revolved, the power of the ghost bone of 8 desolation was continuously stimulated. A black shadow of a fist formed from countless black skulls appeared. It was extremely eerie. Boom! In the hall, the fist and the palm collided. The void trembled and the entire divine cold hall shook as if it was about to collapse. Violent waves of air rushed out in all directions, and the entire hall was filled with black waves of air. It was extremely terrifying. Du Danfeng reacted quickly. His figure flashed and protected Cheng Ruoling. On the other hand, Nie Tian's body shook and the heaven-shrouding totem appeared, enveloping Cheng Ju and Juruer. Cheng Ju and the others were unable to withstand the impact of the waves of air. On the other side, Lu Fangwen also protected Dongfang Jie and hurriedly retreated. Impudent! At the same time, a delicate voice resounded in the hall. It was Mao Xianglong's voice. "How dare you act so atrociously in the divine cold hall?" As her cold voice landed, Mao Xianglong leaped into the air and released an extremely cold aura from her body. The aura engulfed the area and froze the waves of air in the air. Boom! In the next moment, waves of cold energy exploded, and the waves of air were instantly suppressed to a very small area before finally dissipating into the void. The frigid arch was very strong, and seemed to be a little stronger than Dongfang Along. Long Outyin retreated a few steps and stabilized himself with a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Then he smiled at Mao Xianglong and said, "Niece, I'm sorry. It was Dongfang Along who attacked first. I was only forced to retaliate." Mao Xianglong frowned and glanced at Long Outyin, but didn't say anything. Long Outyin was Nie Tian's sworn brother, and Cheng Ju was Nie Tian's disciple. She was Cheng Ju's wife, so it was not wrong for Long Outyin to call her niece. "Lord Frigid Arch, I was impulsive." Dong Wang also retreated a few steps, but he was not injured. He stabilized himself and immediately apologized. He wasn't a fool. Offending the Frigid Arch at this time would definitely not end well for him. Dongfang Yilong's palm strike just now seemed impulsive, but in reality, he wanted to kill Long Outyin with a single strike. He wanted to kill Long Outyin right away to prove his strength. However, he didn't expect that Long Outyin's strength would exceed his expectations and actually block his palm strike. He could tell that even if Mao Xianglong did not make a move, he would not be able to kill Long Outyin. At most, he would only be able to injure the latter. Dongfang Yilong still had no idea when Long Outyin had become so powerful. Nie Tian let out a deep breath. Fortunately, Long Outyin had the 8 Desolation Ghost Bone. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to withstand Dongfang Yilong's palm strike. Dongfang Yilong was a wily old fox. That palm strike, just now, was obviously meant to take Long Outyin's life. Nie Tian's eyes shone with a cold light. There was actually a murderous look in his eyes. "Lord Dongwang, even if you are one of the 9 emperors, you cannot behave atrociously in my divine cold palace. I will let it go this time, but if there's a next time, we will go to the Snow Empress to reason with you," Mao Xianglong said with a dark face. There were unwritten rules among the 9 emperors, such as not to fight each other and to respect each other, and so on. Dongfang Yilong attacking in the Divine Cold Palace was already a huge offense to Mao Xianglong. "Thank you, Lord Frigid Arch." Dongfang Yilong was rather tactful and said lightly, following which his gaze locked onto Nie Tian. As if sensing something, his eyes shone with a cold light. "Dongfang Yilong, since you have guessed my identity, just say it. Why keep it to yourself?" Nie Tian said with a faint smile as he stepped forward. "You really are Nie Tian." Dongfang Yilong's face darkened, and his expression was one of disbelief. Just now, Long Outyin had called Nie Tian Big Brother. Furthermore, the latter's abilities were very strange. Coupled with the attitude that the Frost Empress and the others had unconsciously shown, Dongfang Yilong was suspicious. Under such circumstances, if Dongfang Yilong still could not guess Nie Tian's identity, he would really be too stupid. "Are you surprised that I have returned?" Nie Tian said with a faint smile, his expression calm. In his previous life, he did not have a good relationship with Dongfang Yilong and had even exchanged blows with the latter. In truth, among the 9 emperors, there were not many who could be pleasing to Nie Tian's eyes. This time, after his rebirth, he had clearly realized that his previous view of some people was not accurate. As a person who had lived 2 lives, Nie Tian had experienced many things, and his vision of people had become clearer. Dongfang Yilong looked at Nie Tian with a dark gaze and said solemnly, "Nie Tian, I didn't expect that great Emperor Dawnlight actually didn't kill you back then. The you who has reincarnated, your talent seems to be even more terrifying than before." In that instant earlier, Dongfang Yilong noticed the means Nie Tian used to protect Chengju and the rest. That kind of aura was already not weaker than ordinary 9th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists. But Nie Tian's current strength was only 7th-level Heavenly Emperor. If he reached 9th-level Heavenly Emperor, probably no one in the entire Heaven Realm's Divine Realm would be his match anymore. "Then are you still going to seek justice for your son?" Nie Tianling smiled coldly, a look of ridicule on his face. Dongfang Yilong's brows furrowed slightly and did not reply to Nie Tian's words. Instead, he involuntarily looked toward Mao Xianglong. He naturally knew about Nie Tian and Chengju's relationship, and also knew about Chengju and Mao Xianglong's relationship. Earlier, Mao Xianglong revealed the intention of shielding Nie Tian. If he were to make a move against Nie Tian here, Mao Xianglong absolutely would not look on with folded arms. Dongfang Along was still not very wary of just one Mao Xianglong. The most troublesome thing was that there was still Du Danfeng by Nie Tian's side. Du Danfeng had the title of Poison Emperor and was extremely adept at using poison. Even if it was a peak Heavenly Emperor martial artist, if he fell for Du Danfeng's tricks, that would be enough to suffer. Looking at Du Danfeng's meaning, it seemed like he was standing on Nie Tian's side. This made Dongfang Yilong even more apprehensive, putting aside that Nie Tian only injured Dongfang Jie. Even if he killed Dongfang Jie, Dongfang Yilong might not dare to make a move at this moment either. Suddenly, Dongfang Yilong smiled sinisterly and asked, Nie Tian, this emperor is very curious. Does Great Emperor Dawnlight know that you're back too? Then you'll have to ask Luo Chunhun. Nie Tian replied indifferently with a calm expression. He knew that he could no longer hide his identity, so he might as well openly admit it. With Nie Tian's domineering return, the person who should be panicking at this moment should be Luo Chunhun. Dongfang Yilong's eyes flickered nonstop. Right now, there was no way he could do anything to Nie Tian. After thinking for a moment, Dongfang Yilong suddenly looked at Mao Xianglong and said, Lord Cold Emperor, in order to protect your good-for-nothing husband, Cheng Ju, you promised this emperor some things back then. I believe you haven't forgotten about it, right? Hearing Dongfang Yilong's words, Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he thought to himself, as expected, in order to protect Cheng Ju, Mao Xianglong has indeed put in a lot of effort. Dongfang Yilong looked at Mao Xianglong with a dark expression and said, if it wasn't for this emperor's help, Cheng Ju would be with his two senior brothers right now, and not standing in this divine cold palace. What do you want? Just say it directly. Mao Xianglong frowned and said solemnly. Chapter 1262. Dongfang Yilong's words reverberated throughout the main hall, plunging it into a deathly silence. Everyone looked stiffly at Dongfang Yilong. They had not expected him to force the marriage. If Dongfang Yilong wasn't forcing her to marry him by using her past as a threat, then what was? Impossible. After a few seconds of silence, a shrill voice rang out. It was Cheng Ruoling. She did not like Dongfang Jie at all. In fact, she hated him to the core and would never agree to the engagement. Is it impossible? Dongfang Yilong's lips curled into a smile. His dark gaze focused on Mao Xianglong as he said faintly, Lord Frost Emperor, you are one of the 9 emperors. When I helped you back then, you promised that if I had anything to ask of you, as long as it was within your capabilities, you would definitely agree. I believe this marriage is within your capabilities, Lord Frost Emperor. Mao Xianglong's face darkened. Her brows furrowed and her eyes flashed with hesitation. Mother, you can't really be thinking of agreeing? Cheng Ruoling shouted anxiously when she saw Mao Xianglong's reaction. Xianglong, what did you promise Dong Wang back then? Was it to save me? I am a man. How can I use my daughter's happiness in exchange for my current life? No matter what, I will never agree to Dong Wang's marriage proposal. Cheng Ju stepped forward and said gravely. Of course, he had not been captured by Luo Chenan. Just having his yuan meridians crippled was already a great mercy. However, he did not know how much Mao Xianglong had done for him. Hearing Cheng Ju's words, Mao Xianglong's face darkened even more. Cheng Ruoling was her daughter. As a mother, how could she bear to watch her daughter's happiness be destroyed? The atmosphere in the main hall fell into a deathly silence. It was suffocating. Cheng Ruoling's eyes were red and wet. Dong Wang, you're also one of the 9 emperors. Is it really appropriate for you to threaten a little girl with your status? Just then, an unexpected voice rang out. It was Du Danfeng. Du Danfeng did not just dislike Dongfang Yilong's actions. He had other plans. Poison Emperor, this is a matter between me and the Frost Emperor. You don't seem to have the qualifications to interfere, do you? Dongfang Yilong glanced at Du Danfeng and said indifferently, Is it really between the two of you? Du Danfeng chuckled and said, I seem to remember that the treatment of Chengju back then was a matter that the 9 of us discussed together. Could it be that you have reached some sort of agreement with the Frost Emperor? I wonder what the Snow Empress and the Day-Night Empress would think if they knew about this. Du Danfeng, what do you mean by that? Dongfang Yi's face sank. Clearly, he did not expect Du Danfeng to say such things. 9 Thearchs discuss. Hearing this, Nie Tian's heart involuntarily trembled. He immediately understood that the 9 emperors seemed to have made a joint decision on how to deal with Chengju back then. Perhaps in order to protect Chengju, Emperor Han had secretly made a deal with Dongfang Along and owed him a big favor. Nie Tian's guess was right. The matter of him being killed back then had many implications, and the handling of Chengju was one of the key issues. It was because of Chengju's Dragon Sun extermination body. The Dragon Sun extermination body was an extremely rare heaven-level spirit body. Once it matured, its potential was limitless. Luo Chunhun had strongly advocated for Chengju to be killed back then to prevent any future trouble. However, Chengju and the Frost Emperor had an unusual relationship. In the end, Chengju's Yuan meridians were destroyed, and she was not allowed to step out of the Divine Chill Palace for the rest of her life. Back then, Dongfang Along had stood up to support Mao Xianglong at a crucial moment, and that was why Chengju's life was spared. As he thought of all this, Nie Tian's heart trembled violently. He had a bold guess. His killing back then was also a joint decision by the 9 Thearchs. This guess made Nie Tian's face sink, even though he did not know how likely it was. However, if it was true, didn't that mean that the 9 Thearchs had planned to kill him back then? Lord Dongwang, you know very well what I mean, Zhou Dongwang said. Du Danfeng looked at Dongfang Yilong and smiled faintly. If you don't want to blow things up, then let me have this last Chengju. Du Danfeng and Dongfang Along were both 9 Thearchs, and both of them knew the Snow Empress very well. The Snow Empress hated it when the 9 Thearchs formed factions and colluded with each other. Let you have her. Dongfang Along was stunned. He did not understand what Du Danfeng meant, and said, "You are already so old. Are you interested in a lass?" Bullsh asterisk T. Du Danfeng shouted angrily. Last Chengju has the rare 10,000 poison spirit meridian. I want to take her as my disciple. Can't I? Disciple. Dongfang Along was stunned once again. He did not expect Du Danfeng to have such an idea. Everyone knew that Du Danfeng was a lone ranger. He was the only one among the 9 Thearchs who did not have a fixed residence. He did not have any subordinates, disciples, or sections. He was all alone. It was very strange that Du Danfeng wanted to take her as his disciple. Lass, are you willing to be my disciple? Du Danfeng did not bother about Dongfang Along. He looked at Cheng Ruoling and asked plainly, "Old man, if I become your disciple, does that mean I don't have to marry Dongfang Jie?" Cheng Ruoling's beautiful eyes flickered as she asked. "Of course." Du Danfeng chuckled. He glanced at Dongfang Jie and said without any hesitation, "How can my disciple marry a piece of trash?" "You." Dongfang Jie's face darkened when he was called a piece of trash. He opened his mouth, but he did not dare to say anything else. "All right, I'll be your disciple." Cheng Ruoling thought for a moment before she walked to Du Danfeng's side. She knelt down and kowtowed. She said in a clear voice, "Teacher, please accept a bow from your disciple." All right. Du Danfeng chuckled and helped Cheng Ruoling up. He said, "From now on, you're old freak Du's only disciple. If anyone dares to threaten you, I will not let them off." Du Danfeng glanced at Dongfang Yilong as he spoke. His words were clearly meant for Dongfang Along to hear. Chengju and Mao Xianglong were dumbfounded. They did not know what was going on. Du Danfeng looked at Mao Xianglong and said, "Lord Cold Emperor, do you have any objections to the little girl becoming my disciple?" "No objections." "Of course, I have no objections." Mao Xianglong immediately reacted and said, "It is Ling Er's fortune to be able to become Lord Poison Emperor's disciple." "Thank you, Lord Poison Emperor." Chengju also reacted and bowed slightly. Du Danfeng let out a strange laugh and glanced at Nie Tian. Then, he said with a chuckle, It's just that this old man is one generation younger than someone for no reason. Lord Poison Emperor must be joking. Nie Tian shook his head. Even if the Poison Emperor was indeed a generation younger than him, he could not really treat him as a junior. Old Poison, that means you're one generation younger than me. Long Outyin laughed and said with a proud look on his face. Another 9 emperors had become his junior. Long Outyin was happy just thinking about it. Chapter 1263. Up in the divine cold palace, Dongfang Yilong called out the Poison Emperor's name, clearly enraged. He could have forced Mao Xianglong to agree to the marriage proposal, but Du Danfeng's sudden appearance caught him off guard. How can this be called going against him? Du Danfeng chuckled and said, "Everyone is just relying on their own abilities. If you still want to force Emperor Frost to agree to your marriage proposal, feel free to continue." Dongfang Yilong was so angry that he was speechless. The latter was already Cheng Ruoling's teacher, and even if Mao Xianglong agreed to the marriage proposal now, he would have to consider it. Was it worth offending both the Frost Emperor and the Poison Emperor for Cheng Ruoling? After some consideration, Dongfang Yilong finally chose to give up. He did not want his relationship with the Frost Emperor and the Poison Emperor to sour, so he had to give up on the marriage proposal. Emperor Frost, forget about the marriage proposal, but remember, you still owe me a favor. Dongfang Yilong looked at Mao Xianglong and said solemnly, "You underestimate me, Emperor Dongwang. I, Mao Xianglong, am not someone who goes back on his word." Mao Xianglong nodded slightly, his eyes calm. "That's good." Dongfang Yilong smiled sinisterly, then looked at Nie Tian and said, "Nie Tian, your reincarnation was indeed beyond my expectations. But let me tell you something, Emperor Dainite is not someone who gives up easily. Your life will be his sooner or later. My life is my own business. Emperor Dongwang does not need to worry about it." Nie Tian replied indifferently. "Umph." Dongfang Yilong was stunned, then sneered and said in a low voice, "Farewell." With that, he did not stay any longer and turned to leave. "They're finally gone." Nie Tian shook his head slightly as he looked at the backs of Dongfang Yilong and the others, and his expression became complicated at the same time. Mao Xianglong and Du Danfeng looked at each other. They were both smart people, so of course they knew what Nie Tian was thinking. The 9 Emperors discussion. Lord Ao Jian. Mao Xianglong thought for a while and finally said, "I did not know that you were killed back then." "Me too," Du Danfeng said. Du Danfeng also said, "We only found out about what happened to you later on. We only participated in the aftermath of your death. In that case, my death wasn't decided by the 9 emperors, but by Emperor Dainite alone." Nie Tian nodded his head and heaved a sigh of relief. If Mao Xianglong and Du Danfeng were involved in his death, he really didn't know how to face them. Not necessarily. Du Danfeng sighed meaningfully and said, "I don't believe Dainite Monarch would have the guts to do this if he was alone." "What do you mean?" Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he waited for Du Dafeng to continue. Du Danfeng shook his head and said, "Brother Nie, you know that although I know some things, I absolutely can't say them. Why are you making things difficult for me?" Nie Tian glanced at Mao Xianglong. Mao Xianglong also had a troubled expression as he said, "Although the 9 emperors represent supreme authority in the heaven realm, there are many things in the heaven realm that cannot be decided by the 9 emperors." "I understand." Nie Tian nodded his head. Mao Xianglong's meaning was clear. The actions of the 9 emperors were controlled by the upper realms. If there were no accidents, no one in the heaven realm other than the 9 emperors would know about the existence of the upper realms. However, Nie Tian had a question in his mind. Since the 9 emperors knew about the upper realms, they would definitely know about the godly state. Then why couldn't the 9 emperors break through to the godly state? Even the Snow Empress, one of the 9 emperors, was only a demigod. She was only half a step away from the godly state. Shui Wushuang, Luo Zian, Thousand Stream Kill. Suddenly, Nie Tian said 3 names and laughed weirdly. These 3 people left the heaven realm and went to another place, right? Hearing these 3 names, Mao Xianglong couldn't help but frown, and a surprised expression appeared on his face. "You already know?" Du Danfeng was also stunned for a moment and looked at Nye Tian in disbelief. So that's how it is. Nye Tian looked at their reactions and said, "Looks like I guessed right. The upper realms will choose 3 geniuses every 300 years. These 3 people are the 3 people who were chosen last time, right?" Mao Xianglong and Du Danfeng looked at each other. They didn't dare to speak or react. These were the top secrets of the Heaven Realm. Other than the 9 emperors, no one else was allowed to know about it. They didn't know how Nye Tian knew about this. Nye Tian smiled faintly. "It seems that I blocked someone's path to the upper realms. That's why they treated me as a stumbling block and got rid of me." The frigid emperor and the poison emperor's expressions told him everything. Shui Wushuang, Luo Zian, Thousand Stream Kill. Which one of the 3 did Nye Tian block? Behind these 3 were 2 people, the Snow Empress and the Dawn Twilight Emperor. The Dawn Twilight Emperor didn't have the courage to kill Nye Tian alone. Nye Tian guessed that the Snow Empress and the Dawn Twilight Emperor had planned this together. In his previous life, Nye Tian died under the hands of one of the 3 great evil curses of the Heaven Realm, the Soul-Locking Terror Curse. It was impossible for Luo Chenhun and his daughter to know about this evil curse, so there must be someone even more terrifying behind them. This person was most likely the Snow Empress. Snow Empress, one of the 9 emperors, the most revered person in the Heaven Realm. Could it really be you? Nye Tian thought to himself. At the same time, he thought of another question. That was the sage brand on Mo Rushi's body. Nye Tian guessed that the sage brand was also done by the Snow Empress. It was a pity that the Sword Elder was no longer around. Even if Nye Tian met the Snow Empress now, he wouldn't be able to confirm that she was the one who left the sage brand on Mo Rushi's body. At this time, Nye Tian seemed to understand something. Why didn't Luo Chenhun dare to kill him openly when he returned to the Heaven Realm's celestial realm? Instead, he sent people from the Shura sect to kill him. It seemed like he was afraid of something. Luo Chenhun didn't dare to kill him personally. It must be because he was afraid of someone. Nye Tian boldly guessed that the upper realms must have sent someone to stay in the Heaven Realm celestial realm to monitor the 9 emperors. This made it very difficult for Luo Chenhun to do anything. Could the person behind the demonic wayward map be someone from the upper realms? Nye Tian suddenly thought of the demonic wayward map. His heart trembled and his eyes flickered. At this time, a big net formed in his mind. However, there were some mysteries that he hadn't solved yet. There were many things that he couldn't see clearly. Luo Chenhun, just you wait. I will definitely get to the bottom of what happened in the past. Nye Tian said in his heart. A cold light flickered in his eyes. With this thought, Nye Tian calmed down. His path of revenge was about to begin. At this time, Nye Tian suddenly sensed something. His eyes couldn't help but tremble. He exclaimed, "What a terrifying sword intent!" Boom! In the next moment, before he could finish his sentence, a loud explosion sounded like a thunderclap. "Who is it?" Mao Xianglong frowned. Her figure moved, and she directly rushed out of the Divine Cold Palace. Nye Tian and the others also rushed out. Outside the main hall, thousands of meters above the Divine Cold Palace, 2 figures stood facing each other. Powerful sword intent was released from their bodies. They were like 2 sharp swords that stood tall in the sky. Songshan Shui. Nye Tian looked up and his eyes trembled. He recognized one of the figures. It was Songshan Shui. Chapter 1264. High up in the sky outside the Divine Cold Palace, 2 figures were facing off against each other. Nye Tian's face sank as he looked at the 2 people in the sky. A cold light flickered in his eyes. Back then, he had asked Songshan Shui to protect Mo Rushi and share as an additional layer of protection. He did not expect it to come in handy now. Although Mo Rushi and Cher were under the protection of the Frost Thwarch in the Divine Chill Palace, it was impossible for the latter to follow them all the time. If a pinnacle powerhouse were to appear, it was very likely that they would be able to capture Mo Rushi and Cher without anyone noticing. Because of this, Nye Tian asked Songshan Shui to protect him in secret. Songshan Shui's strength was only a small step away from the pinnacle. He was already at the pinnacle. From Nietion's point of view, in terms of sword Dao, only a few peak sword Dao cultivators could suppress Song Shan Shui. Song Shan Shui's true battle power was definitely in the top 20 of the Heaven Realm. The other person was also a swordsman. His sword aura and sword essence were no weaker than Song Shan Shui's. That person is Heaven Wasteland Home Master Song Shan Shui. Cold Empress saw Song Shan Shui and immediately recognized him. She frowned and said with a dark expression, "Why is he in the Divine Cold Palace?" It was obvious that Frost Emperor did not know that Song Shan Shui had been hiding in the Divine Cold Palace. Although the Frost Empress was strong, it was impossible for her to remain vigilant all the time. It was indeed not easy for her to sense someone who was not much weaker than her. The other person is no weaker than Song Shan Shui, but his aura is completely unfamiliar. Who is he? Du Danfeng also spoke at this moment. His perceptive ability was not much weaker than Nietion's. He frowned and said, Du Danfeng had lived for 600 to 700 years. He had interacted with all the peak experts in the Heaven Realm. However, the person in front of Song Shan Shui was definitely a stranger. Du Danfeng was puzzled. When did such a terrifying person appear in the Heaven Domain? Boom! Just then, Song Shan Shui and the man in black attacked again. Two sword shadows collided. The world wailed, the wind changed color, and the space trembled. A battle between peak experts was enough to destroy heaven and earth. The sky was dark and gloomy, and the terrible sword intent raged as if it was going to tear the world apart. The shadows of the swords clashed together. Two terrifying auras clashed continuously. Song Shan Shui and that person's silhouette were drowned in it. Lord Frigid Monarch, Kang Shangshu is someone I asked to protect Ru Shi and Shuer. Please forgive me for not informing you beforehand. Nietion knew what Frigid Monarch was thinking and quickly explained. Mao Xianglong was slightly taken aback. He had not expected such a situation at all. Nietion being able to invite Song Shan Shui was beyond her expectations. Lord Ao Jian, do you have a deep friendship with the Heaven Wasteland Palace? Du Danfeng was also taken aback. He naturally knew that it was not that easy to invite an expert like the Heaven Wasteland Hall Master. Moreover, from what Nietion said, Song Shan Shui had been hiding in the Divine Cold Palace, guarding the two ladies closely. It's just a deal, Nietion said. Then, he thought of something and looked at Mao Xianglong. Lord Frost Emperor, where are Ru Shi and Cher? Come with me, Mao Xianglong said, nodding slightly. Then, he blurred into action and flew off. Nietion followed him. In a short while, they arrived at a small hidden courtyard. Two beautiful figures were standing in the courtyard. They were Mo Rushi and Cher. Sister Rushi, where did these two people come from? Cher whispered with a frightened face. She held the phantom snow fox in one hand and Mo Rushi in the other. I don't know either. Mo Rushi was still calm. Looking at the two figures in the sky, she was shocked. This was the first time she saw a battle between two peak-level heavenly emperors. It was too terrifying. Just this aura alone was hard to resist. However, Mo Rushi could tell that one of them was here to capture them, while the other was here to protect them. Sister Rushi, when is Nietion coming back? Cher asked in a low voice. Mo Rushi shook her head slightly. She also didn't know when Nietion would come back. Rushi, Shuer. Just as the two girls were still in a state of shock, a familiar voice rang out. Nietion. Mo Rushi and Cher heard this voice and reacted almost immediately. They looked out of the courtyard in surprise. A figure appeared in the sky and landed beside them. His silver hair fluttered and sword chi surged. It was Nietion. Rushi, Cher, are you all right? Nietion's voice was nervous. He scanned the two with his divine sense. After confirming that they were fine, his expression eased a little. Nietion. Cher was happy and excited. She threw herself into Nietion's arms and started sobbing. Nietion looked a little embarrassed as he looked at Mo Rushi with an embarrassed expression. Mo Rushi nodded with a smile, but she quietly held Nietion's hand tightly. Only when Frostarch and the others arrived did Cher let go of Nietion. Two young ladies, are you all right? Mao Xianglong was also very nervous. Nietian had left Mo Rushi and Cher in the Divine Cold Palace. If something happened to them, she would feel guilty. Lord Frost Arch, we are fine. Mo Rushi nodded, slightly with gratitude in her eyes. These days, Frost Arch had taken good care of them, and even guided them in their cultivation. He was very considerate. Sister Rushi, Sister Cher, are those people from above here to kill you? Chung Rawling came to Mo Rushi's side and asked angrily. It should be. Mo Rushi also didn't understand what was going on, so she nodded. After confirming that Mo Rushi and Cher were fine, Nietian relaxed. Bastard! Mao Xianglong suddenly raised her head, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. She said coldly, "How dare you come to the Divine Cold Palace to kill people? Do you really think that I, Mao Xianglong, am a pushover?" As her cold voice fell, Mao Xianglong's figure soared into the sky, and a powerful cold force surged out of her body. As she slammed her palm down, the endless cold force turned into a hurricane and rolled toward the figure in black. "Huh!" The black-robed figure exclaimed in surprise. Then he stabbed out with his sword, and a huge grayish-yellow sword shadow appeared in the air. However, the instant it neared Mao Xianglong, it was directly frozen, and then shattered with a loud bang. Lord Frost Thearka's divine cold body is really domineering. The person saw this scene but didn't panic. Instead, he said with a playful tone, "Stop talking nonsense and leave your life here." Mao Xianglong's pretty face was cold, and the cold force around her was released even more wildly. The space within tens of thousands of meters immediately turned into an ice cellar, and frost seemed to appear between heaven and earth. It was very strange. Song Shanxue observed from the side, ready to make a move at the critical moment. The person who came was very strong, no weaker than him. If Frost Arch didn't make a move, he would most likely be at a disadvantage. Song Shanxue originally thought that it would be very easy to protect the two girls, but he didn't expect to encounter such a powerful opponent. "Since Lord Frost the Arch wants to play, I will play with you." The figure in black smiled sinisterly, and his body kept releasing a terrifying aura. A terrifying, giant, golden shadow condensed around him, which was thousands of meters tall, like a Shura descending to the world. Chapter 1265. Azura, Demonic Body. Upon hearing Du Danfeng's words, Nietian was taken aback and looked at Du Danfeng. This person could very well be the legendary Shura Gate Patriarch. Du Danfeng's eyes were sharp as he said in a low voice, "Shura Gate Patriarch." Nietian's eyes widened. He didn't expect the Shura Gate Patriarch to appear here. This person's strength was at the peak. Coupled with the Azura demon physique, there was a high possibility that he was the Shura Gate Patriarch. What a terrifying aura! Long Outyin frowned and exclaimed as he sensed an extremely violent aura coming towards him. The Azura demon physique was 3,000 meters tall. It stood tall in the sky and emitted a terrifying aura. Waves of demonic energy filled the air and turned into an invisible pressure that pressed down on the ground. The entire Divine Chill Palace was on the verge of collapsing. "Arrogant!" the frigid Empress shouted. The aura around her suddenly surged. In the blink of an eye, a giant figure like an ice mountain was formed. It was the frigid Empress' frigid physique. Seeing this, Song Shanxue knew that the black-robed man and the frigid Empress were enraged. The result of this battle was likely to be tragic. Song Shanxue's eyes darkened, and he released his sword intent. A giant sword that pierced through the heavens appeared like a heavenly pillar, emitting a terrifying killing intent. F*CK. Are the three of them going to fight to the death? Long Outyin could not help but curse angrily when he saw this scene. His eyes trembled violently. Mao Xianglong, the black-robed man, and Song Shanxue were either experts at the peak or close to it. If this was a battle to the death, it was hard to say what the outcome would be. "Lord Frigid Empress, I would like to see whether your frigid physique or my Azura demon physique is stronger." The black-robed man said coldly. The Azura demon physique suddenly moved. The heavens and earth trembled. The wind and clouds surged, and the mountains changed color. The black-robed man only had eyes for the frigid empress. He seemed to have forgotten about Song Shanxue. Song Shanxue frowned slightly. He suddenly felt like he was being looked down upon. "Make your move," the Frost Tharch shouted angrily. His divine frost body slammed down with his palm. Immediately, the powerful cold energy of the divine Frost Shi exploded. Frost and snow appeared in the sky. It was as if winter had suddenly fallen. The Azure demon body also moved in an instant. A huge fist came crashing down from the sky like a meteorite falling to the ground. The strength of the fist was shocking. "Pay the price." Song Shanxue's eyes turned cold. His giant sword swept through the air and directly collided with the Azure demon body. Boom! The divine frost body and the Azure demon body clashed head-on. A violent explosion rang out, and an endless amount of terrifying power exploded in the space. Waves of powerful aura spread out, and the space wailed, as if doomsday had arrived. Chi, chi, chi. An ear-piercing sound was heard, and violent airwaves exploded in all directions. It was extremely terrifying. When Du Danfeng saw this, he frowned and sent out a palm strike. Immediately, a huge dark green palm appeared and blocked the air wave that was pressing down from the sky. The destructive power of a battle between peak experts was too great. If Du Danfeng didn't make a move, the Divine Cold Palace would probably suffer calamity. Boom! At this moment, Song Shanxue's sword arrived and heavily struck the Azure demon body, causing a terrifying muffled sound. The Azure demon body trembled, as if it was a mountain that had suffered a violent impact. The black-robed figure retreated quickly, and the Azure demon body disappeared in an instant. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, but his eyes were cold. He stared at Song Shanxue and said loudly, "Heaven Wasteland Palace Master, I will remember this sword. In the future, I will repay you 100-fold. Do you still have a future?" The cold emperor frowned slightly and was about to attack. However, the black-robed figure suddenly flickered and disappeared into thin air. Disappeared into thin air. He really disappeared into thin air. There was no aura left, as if he had never appeared. Mao Xianglong's beautiful eyes flickered. She didn't expect the black-robed figure to have such a strange technique and disappear into thin air. And yet Tian and the Poison Emperor were stunned at the same time. Both of their senses were extremely strong, but they didn't sense the existence of the black-robed figure. What a strange technique. And yet Tian couldn't help but feel puzzled. Master Ao Jian. At this moment, the black-robed figure's deep voice suddenly rang in Tian's mind. The black-robed figure had called out his name. Remnant Soul Power. Tian frowned and immediately understood that the black-robed figure had left behind a remnant soul before he left. It seemed that the black-robed figure had something to say to Tian. The sage imprint on that girl can't be suppressed for much longer. The other girl beside her has absorbed a large amount of the sage imprint's power. I'm afraid she won't be able to live for long. If you want the two of them to live, then make a trip to the demonic devouring abyss. Someone wants to see you. Then, the black-robed figure's voice rang in Sumo's mind. As his voice faded, his aura completely disappeared. Tian frowned. He didn't expect the black-robed figure to know so much. Not only did he know about the sage imprint, but he also seemed to know quite a bit about Cher's condition. The black-robed figure only told these words to Tian. It was obvious that he had done it on purpose. Tian couldn't help but look at Cher. The latter's expression didn't change much. Master Ao Jian. At this moment, Emperor Han and Song Shanxue descended and came to Tian's side. The black-robed figure had escaped, even though the two of them had joined forces. It was a little embarrassing. Song Shanxue looked at Tian and said, "Master Ao Jian, this person is too strong. I'm no match for him. It's not your fault." Tian's eyes were a little complicated. He said, "Continue to stay in the Divine Cold Palace. The safety of Rushi and Cher is in your hands." Song Shanchue's expression froze. He then looked at Mao Xianglong, obviously asking for his consent. This was the divine cold palace. If Song Shanchue wanted to stay, it would be up to Emperor Han. Okay. Mao Xianglong nodded solemnly. She originally thought that Mo Rushi and Shuer wouldn't be in any danger if they stayed in the divine cold palace. But today's events made her realize that it would be very difficult for her to protect Mo Rushi and Shuer by herself. If it wasn't for Song Shanchue, Mo Rushi and Sher would have been taken away by the black-robed figure. Thank you, Emperor Han. Song Shanchue nodded. He couldn't help but look at Du Danfeng and said, I didn't expect Master Poison Emperor to be here too. Song Shanchue, you're quite interesting. When did you quit being the Hall Master of the Heaven Wasteland Palace and become a full-time bodyguard? Du Danfeng chuckled. Master Poison Emperor, you must be joking. Song Shanchue was a little embarrassed. It was indeed embarrassing for a Hall Master like him to be a bodyguard. However, he couldn't refuse Nie Tian's condition. Song Shanchue was a little worried that the black-robed figure had already recognized him and would cause trouble for the Heaven Wasteland Palace. Up until now, Nie Tian and the others still didn't know the black-robed figure's true identity. They could only guess that the black-robed figure was the Azura sect leader. Emperor Han, everyone should disperse. I have some matters to attend to. Nie Tian glanced at Mao Xianglong and said indifferently. Chapter 1266. Divine Cold Palace, a small courtyard. Are you all right, Shui? Nie Tian looked at Shui, with a worried expression on his face. The words of the black-robed man made him very uneasy. He was worried that something would happen to Sher. According to the black-robed man, Sher had absorbed the power of Mo Rushi's sage brand, so her current situation was very dangerous, and she could die at any time. However, Nie Tian checked Sher's body again and again with his divine sense and found nothing abnormal. But the more it was like this, the more Nie Tian felt uneasy and panicked. I'm fine. Sher's beautiful eyes twinkled. She was very cute and obedient, as if nothing had happened. Seeing Nie Tian's expression, Mo Rushi knew that he must have discovered something, so she couldn't help but ask, Nie Tian, did something happen? Rushi, how are you feeling recently? Nie Tian's eyes flickered, and he asked. The black-robed man also said that the sage brand in Mo Rushi's body was about to be suppressed. Obviously, this black-robed man was the one who left the sage brand in Mo Rushi's body, or there was someone more powerful behind him. But when the black-robed man said this, he had already left, so Nie Tian could not find him. I'm fine. Mo Rushi looked puzzled. She felt that Nie Tian was strange, as if he was worried about something. Could it be that I'm too nervous? Nie Tian frowned and said in his heart, was the black-robed man trying to scare me? After calming down, Nie Tian was still worried. With the black-robed man's strength, he would not do such a thing. He asked me to go to the demonic devouring abyss. I wonder if it's a trap. Nie Tian thought to himself and frowned even more. He could not determine the situation of Mo Rushi and Sher, which made him very upset. If only the Sword Elder was still here. Master. At this time, the Corpse Demon Lord's voice sounded, and his figure appeared. Corpse Luo. When Nie Tian saw the Corpse Luo Demon Monarch, his eyes trembled as a look of joy appeared on his face. The Sword Elder was not here, but the Corpse Demon Monarch was always here. Perhaps the latter could see something. Master, I'll help the two mistresses examine them. Corpse Luo Demon Monarch jumped onto Nie Tian's shoulder and said. Then black vortexes emerged from his body and slowly flowed into Mo Rushi and Sher's bodies. Mo Rushi and Sher had both seen the Corpse Demon Monarch before, so they were not afraid. After a while, the Corpse Demon Monarch retracted the devouring chi and returned to the chaotic origin coffin. His eyes were flickering. Corpse Luo, are they all right? Nie Tian saw Corpse Luo Demon Monarch's reaction and couldn't help but feel even more nervous. Master, do you want me to speak the truth? Corpse Demon Lord's expression was solemn as he spoke. Of course. Nie Tian's heart sank, and his expression suddenly changed. He immediately had an ominous premonition. Miss Sher indeed has the power of the Saint's brand in her body. The power is currently very calm in her body, but I don't know what will happen next. Corpse Luo, Demon Monarch frowned and said, the saint's brand in Miss Rushi's body is indeed getting stronger and stronger, and it's showing signs of being unable to be suppressed. Could it be that what the man in black said was true? Nietion's eyes trembled violently, and his expression instantly became solemn. Nietion, what happened? Mo Rushi saw Nietion's expression, and her delicate face couldn't help but become conflicted. Rushi, the saint's brand in your body might not be able to be suppressed anymore. Nietion thought for a while and said solemnly. If he didn't tell Mo Rushi anything, she would only be more worried. Mo Rushi's expression stiffened. Previously, Nietion had already told her about the saint's brand, and she also knew what kind of effect it would have on her once it was activated. However, Nietion said that as long as she stayed by Cher's side, she would be able to suppress the saint's brand perfectly. Why did he say that the saint's brand couldn't be suppressed anymore? Nietion, is Cher all right? Mo Rushi suddenly remembered the nervous expression on Nietion's face when he looked at Cher, and she couldn't help but think of something. Her expression suddenly stiffened, and she asked in surprise. I don't know either. Nietion sighed and looked at Cher. Sister Rushi, Nietion, don't worry about me. I'll be fine. That kind of power won't affect me, Cher said with a sweet smile on her face, as if she didn't care at all. Nietion's eyes slightly narrowed, and then he asked, Cher, did you know that you were absorbing the power of the saint's brand all along? Nietion had never mentioned the saint's brand to Cher before, so why would Cher suddenly mention it? So that kind of power is called the saint's brand. Cher smiled sweetly and said, I just felt that there was a power in Sister Rushi's body that seemed to be hurting her, so I helped her absorb this power. Cher, Mo Rushi obviously didn't expect this to happen either. Her pretty face stiffened, and she didn't know what to say. Sister Rushi won't blame me, right? Seeing Mo Rushi's expression, Cher's face immediately became nervous, knowing that the latter would be angry. Thank you, Cher. Mo Rushi's eyes became wet, and there was a surge of warmth in her heart. Sister Rushi, aren't you angry? Cher giggled, and she tightly hugged Mo Rushi's arm. Her little head leaned on the latter's shoulder, and she said very happily, Cher knows that Sister Rushi loves Cher the most. Stupid girl, you've been helping me all along. Why didn't you tell me? Mo Rushi pouted, but her heart was filled with warmth. Sister Rushi has also been helping Cher all along. Cher smiled happily. Nietion looked at the scene in front of him, and his heart was filled with warmth. However, the problem still hadn't been solved. Mo Rushi's saint's brand was getting stronger and stronger, and Cher had absorbed the power of the saint's brand. Rushi, Cher, I will definitely not let anything happen to you, Nietion said heavily in his heart. He made a decision in his heart. He would make a trip to the demonic devouring abyss tomorrow. Anyway, it wasn't too far from here, and he would be back in a few days. It's best to let the old poison accompany me. Nietion thought of Du Danfeng and set his heart. At this moment, Corpse Demon Lord suddenly said, Master, I feel that it's better to create an essence meridian for Miss Cher first. As long as Miss Cher has an essence meridian, no matter how strong the saint's brand is, it won't be able to harm her. Create an essence meridian. Nietion's eyes trembled. He had also thought of this point, but Sword Elder wasn't here. He wasn't sure if creating an essence meridian for Cher was the best choice. If something went wrong during the process of creating an essence meridian, or if the saint's brand was triggered, it would be terrible. Master, Sword Elder isn't here, but there's still an old monster in the Stone of Three Lives. Why don't we ask him? Corpse Demon Lord knew what Nietion was worried about, so he chuckled and said, Be sure, Tion. Nietion's eyes slightly narrowed. If it wasn't for Corpse Demon Lord's reminder, he would have forgotten that there was still a D. Sure Tion. Chapter 1267. Nietion suddenly thought of Sakura. His mind stirred, and he directly took out the Three Lives Stone. A blood-colored boulder with a radius of 10 meters appeared out of thin air, releasing a blood-colored light on it. There was a surge of power on the periphery, stirring up layers of ripples. What's this? Mo, Rushi, and Cher looked at the blood-colored boulder that suddenly appeared and were stunned at the same time, crying out in surprise. Such a colossus actually appeared out of thin air. It was truly miraculous. 3 live stone. Nyetian smiled faintly and immediately said, "You guys wait for me outside. I'll go in to confirm some things first." Finished talking, Nyetian took a step out. A streak of blood-colored light appeared, and his figure directly disappeared. Mo, Rushi, and Cher exchanged a glance, their small faces incredibly shocked. Nyetian actually had such a magical thing on him. Inside the 3 live stones' inner world, inside Wan Jian's soul tomb, Nyetian's figure appeared. Looking at the countless enormous swords high above in the sky, his brows furrowed slightly, and he shouted out, "Sakura, come out. Stinking brat, you're finally willing to show up?" Sakura's shrill voice sounded out. The last time, the conversation between him and Nyetian ended on bad terms, clearly making him extremely furious. He had been imprisoned inside the fiend god origin embryo all along, so his mood naturally would not be good. "Sakura, the last time I left, it was just to give you some time to calm down and let you thoroughly recognize your situation." Nyetian smiled faintly and said, "That's right, you're indeed an ancient powerhouse, but the current you is merely a wisp of remnant soul. Furthermore, you're imprisoned by the fiend god origin embryo. If I'm willing, you can't possibly break free from the fiend god origin embryo's imprisonment in this lifetime." "Stinking brat, are you threatening this seat here?" Sakura roared coldly and said, "You're a plain world's martial artist. As long as you don't reach the realms, you can't step foot into the deity realm. After 1,000 years, when your body dies and your soul perishes, this seat can still break free from the imprisonment all the same. Is that so?" Nye Tianling smiled coldly and said, "My current strength is almost at the peak of the heavenly emperor realm. Do you think that in the remaining 700 to 800 years, I can't step into the god realm?" "You?" Sakura was speechless after hearing Nye Tian's question. With Nye Tian's talent, if there were no accidents, he would definitely be able to step into the god realm. And once he reached the god realm, his lifespan would really be close to infinite. Thinking of this, Sakura's heart turned cold. He didn't want to be imprisoned for a lifetime. "Brat, what exactly do you want?" After a moment, Sakura calmed down. Listening to his voice, he was already very clear about his current situation. "Disher Tian, from now on, we are not enemies, but friends for the time being. I need your help with something." Nye Tian didn't talk nonsense and said directly, "Help." Sakura smiled coldly and immediately said, "What benefits do I get from helping you? I can guarantee you that if one day my fiend god vital embryo breaks the suppression and I can control the fiend god vital embryo, I will consider letting you out and can even help you find a suitable physical body," Nye Tian said. "Are you serious?" Inconceivable excitement seeped through Sakura's voice, but it immediately became elevated as he said, "How can you guarantee your words? If your fiend god vital embryo opens, maybe the first thing you do is to completely erase my soul." Nye Tian smiled slightly and said, Sakura, do you think you still have a choice? Either be imprisoned until you die naturally, or help me in exchange for a chance to live. You think about it yourself." Finished talking, Nye Tian turned around abruptly and prepared to leave. "Wait." Seeing that Nye Tian was about to leave, Sakura immediately panicked and immediately exclaimed, "I promise to help." Sakura, you aren't too stupid after all." The corner of Nye Tian's mouth slightly rose as he said in his heart. He knew that Sakura would definitely compromise, just like Corpse Demon Monarch back then. "Stinking brat, you better be a person who keeps his promise. Otherwise, even if I die, I will destroy your fiend god vital embryo." Sakura's heart was also cold as he said. He was, after all, an ancient powerhouse with many sinister methods. If Nye Tian went back on his words in the future, he would definitely fight to the death. "Say it. What do you want me to help you with?" Sakura said in a deep voice. "Let me ask you something first, You must answer truthfully. Nyetian nodded and said, Go ahead and ask. I still disdain to lie to you. Sakura's voice returned to a deep voice and was actually somewhat disdainful. Very good. Nyetian nodded slightly. He didn't care what Sakura's attitude was as long as he could know what he was interested in. Hence, he asked, Wanjian Soul Tomb is made from a piece of 3 live stone, right? Yes. Sakura responded cold, but he was very surprised in his heart. He didn't expect that Nyetian even knew about the 3 live stone. After confirming this, Nyetian nodded and smiled. Then, his eyes sank and he asked, Do you know about the body of a sage? The body of a sage? Hearing these 4 words, Sakura's voice trembled and he exclaimed, How do you know about the body of a sage? The body of a sage was the number 1 martial body throughout the ages. Sakura was once a powerhouse at the peak of the god state. How could he not know about it? However, he didn't expect that the silver-haired youth in front of him actually knew about the body of a sage. It seemed that this silver-haired youth knew a lot of things, and they were all things that he shouldn't have known. Because my wife is the body of a sage. Nyetian didn't hide it. He made a decision in his heart that he would bring Mo Rushi in later. Sakura's voice trembled, and he couldn't say a word. When he was imprisoned by the fiend god Origin Embryo, he wasn't so surprised. The body of a sage, the legendary number 1 martial body throughout the ages, was actually by Nyetian's side. This was too scary. Kid, you aren't lying to me, right? Sakura took a long breath and calmed down a little. He said while trembling, My name is Nyetian. Nyetian responded faintly and said, Do I look like I'm lying to you? Then, Sakura's eyes immediately became hot, and he said with a trembling voice, Then has her body of a sage awakened? Yes. Nyetian shook his head and smiled bitterly. He said, But someone left the mark of a sage on her when the body of a sage was awakened. The mark of a sage. Sakura was stunned again and said in shock, The legendary mark that can deprive holy power. It was obvious that Sakura knew a little about the body of a sage and the mark of a sage. This is impossible. But the next moment, Sakura let out a strange cry and said, This is a plain world. It's impossible for the body of a sage to be awakened, and it's even more impossible for someone to have the mark of a sage. Brat, you're lying to me. It was very difficult to awaken the body of a sage. Not to mention in a plain world. Even in a domain, it was very difficult to awaken. As for the mark of a sage, it was even more impossible. The mark of a sage was rumored to be the mark of a saint's soul left by other sages on other sages. It represented a kind of deprivation. Could it be that there were still sages in a small plain world? Wait a moment. Nyetian didn't explain too much to Sakura. His figure flashed and disappeared directly. After a while, Nyetian's figure appeared again, but there were 2 more beautiful faces beside him. It was Mo Rushi and Cher. Chapter 1268. When Nyetian heard Sakura's voice, he already knew how shocked the latter was, and he could even imagine the latter's astonished look. Nyetian, what is this place? Mo Rushi and Cher looked at the tens of thousands of giant swords in the sky, and the sword inheritance, and said at the same time, with a trembling voice, This is the inner space of the 3 life stone. These giant swords were left by the ancient god-state swordsmen, and those sword light balls are sword inheritance. Nyetian looked at the 2 girls in front of him and explained with a smile. God-state swordsman, sword inheritance. Mo Rushi's delicate face was shocked to the extreme, and she couldn't say anything else. She was still doubting whether the god-state really existed, but there were so many sword inheritance left by the god-state swordsman in front of her. This kind of shock was indescribable. Sister Rushi, why are these giant swords floating in the air? Why don't they fall? Cher didn't feel anything. She couldn't understand what it meant to be a god-state powerhouse and so many sword inheritance, so she asked with a puzzled face. Nyetian and Mo Rushi looked at each other and were speechless at the same time. Sakura, do you believe me now? Nyetian didn't explain too much to Cher, but said to Sakura. At this time, Sakura finally reacted and said in shock, it really is the body of a sage, and after awakening, it is the body of a sage with a sage's mark. If Mo Rushi hadn't appeared in front of him, Sakura wouldn't have believed Nietion's words. But now, the facts are in front of him, and he had to believe it. Nietion, what do you want me to do? After a long time, Sakura calmed down and said, with my current strength, there is no way to help her suppress the sage's mark. Sakura was just a remnant soul. If he could recover to his peak state, it would be very easy for him to suppress the sage's mark. He had already seen that the sage's mark on Mo Rushi's body was not left by a sage. There was no holy power, but it carried a sinister power. It should be left by someone who had mastered the sage's mark. Sakura, look at the other girl. Nietion nodded solemnly and said, Sakura was slightly stunned, but in the next moment, there was no sound again. He had placed all of his attention on Mo Rushi, and he had completely neglected Snow. When he shifted his attention to Cher, he fell into a state of shock once again, unable to utter a single word. How is this possible? After a long time, Sakura's voice sounded again, and it was filled with great shock. Of course, Sakura could only talk to Nietion. Mo Rushi and Cher couldn't hear his voice. This girl is actually... Tion trembled, but he couldn't say the following words no matter what. You also saw through Cher's identity? Nietion's pupils suddenly shrank. It seemed that Sakura also saw through Cher's identity. I can't say it. Sakura was so shocked that he didn't dare to speak. Nietion frowned. At this moment, Sakura was no longer shocked but terrified. Nietion's fiend god nascent embryo and Mo Rushi's sage body did not make Sakura frightened. Who was Cher in the end to actually be able to scare Sakura? The Sword Elder refused to reveal Cher's identity, and Sakura also refused to say it, which made the doubts in Nietion's heart even heavier. Nietion, this girl is too scary. I can't say it. Sakura finally calmed down a little. If Nietion could see his face, he would discover that it was extremely embarrassing. Sakura didn't expect that the people around Nietion were actually so scary, one more terrifying than the other. One fiend god nascent embryo, one sage body, and one. When these three people gather together, it's hard to imagine, Sakura said in his heart. At this time, he realized that Nietion was far more terrifying than he imagined. Previously, Sakura felt strange in his heart. What method did Nietion use to help Mo Rushi suppress the sage imprint? So it was because of Cher's existence. Sakura, I want to create an origin vein for Cher now. Will there be any danger? Nietion paused and asked directly. Create an origin vein? Sakura was stunned at first, then said, You found the 10,000-year-old 3 lives grass? Obviously, Sakura also knew that in order to create an origin vein for Cher, he needed the 10,000-year-old 3 lives grass. Is this okay? Nietion smiled faintly, and the 3 lives grass spiritual liquid appeared in his hand. It really is the 10,000-year-old 3 lives grass. Sakura was shocked and exclaimed. He didn't know what Nietion had experienced. How could he find the 10,000-year-old 3 lives grass in the heaven realm? It was too strange. The spiritual liquid refined from the 10,000-year-old 3 lives grass, plus the 3 lives stone, can help her create an origin vein. But Tion opened his mouth heavily, but then he hesitated and swallowed back the words he was about to say. But what? Nietion was slightly stunned. Nothing. Sakura sighed and said, You need to help her create an origin vein immediately, or else the power of the saint's imprint she absorbs may harm her. As long as you help her create an origin vein, she will be able to directly fuse with the power of the saint's imprint. Really? Nietion's gaze trembled and flickered with blazing divine light. He was originally worried whether Cher absorbing the power of the saint's imprint would have any impact on the creation of an origin vein. But hearing what Sakura said, he must immediately create an origin vein for Cher, or else her life would be in danger. Nietion, I'm already in this kind of situation. Do I still dare to lie to you? Sakura laughed bitterly, but in his heart he said, It's just that once the 3 lives vein appears, I wonder who will be attracted. Great. Nyetian smiled in delight as he made up his mind to start building Er's spiritual meridians right away. Corpse Luo. Nyetian's mind moved, and Corpse Luo Devil Monarch immediately appeared. Master, I'm already prepared. Corpse Luo Devil Monarch seemed a little excited. He clearly heard the conversation between Nyetian and Sakura. Nyetian nodded, then looked at Cher and said, Cher, I'm going to create an origin vein for you now. Really? Cher was still looking at the huge sword in the sky in a daze. When she suddenly heard Nyetian's words, she was pleasantly surprised and said, Will I be able to become a martial artist after I have an origin vein? Yes. Nyetian smiled faintly. It seemed that Cher was also looking forward to this day. Nyetian, once the 3 lives vein is born in this girl's body, then it won't be as simple as becoming a martial artist. Sakura said heavily in his heart, but there were some things that he couldn't tell Nyetian now, so he could only keep it in his heart. At this time, Corpse Luo Devil Monarch had already started to move. His little claws formed a seal, and countless runes appeared in the sky, gradually condensing into a spirit formation. Miss Cher, lend me some of your blood. Corpse Luo Devil Monarch came to Cher's side and said with a mischievous smile. Cher nodded slightly, bit her fingertip, and a drop of white blood dripped down. Chapter 1269. In Wan Jian's soul tomb, Nyetian looked at the spiritual array in the air and asked excitedly, Corpse Luo, is this the spiritual array that Sword Elder taught you? Corpse Luo Demon Lord chuckled and nodded. This is the 3 lives convergence array. It can gather the power of 3 lives within the 3 lives stone. The power of 3 lives? Nyetian was slightly stunned and couldn't help but feel strange because he didn't feel any power within the space of the 3 lives stone. The power of 3 lives is a natural power within the 3 lives stone. It's extremely mysterious and can stimulate some special powers within the human body. You can't feel it. Indra's voice sounded as he explained to Nyetian. Indra was also very surprised at this moment. He didn't think that there would be a capable person like Corpse Luo Demon Lord by Nyetian's side, who could even lay out the 3 lives convergence array. Of course, he didn't know that the 3 lives convergence array was learned from Sword Elder. After a while, Cher's drop of blood completely fused with the 3 lives convergence array. Invisible power surged into the spiritual array. Nyetian frowned. Although he couldn't feel the existence of the power of 3 lives, he could feel the fluctuation of space. Waves of power were constantly gathering towards the spiritual array. Corpse Luo, how long does it take to create the Yuan Meridian? Nyetian couldn't help but ask. About 3 days. Corpse Luo Demon Lord nodded slightly. As he spoke, he paid attention to the movements of the 3 lives convergence array. At a certain moment, Corpse Luo Demon Lord seemed to have noticed something. He smiled and nodded. The power of 3 lives in the spiritual array is enough. With that, Corpse Luo Demon Lord looked at Cher and said, Miss Cher, you need to completely relax now. I'm going to send you into the spiritual array. Okay. Cher's face flushed red with excitement. She was finally going to create the Yuan Meridian and embark on the path of martial arts. This was something she had dreamed of for a long time. Big Sister Rushi, Nyetian, I'm going. Cher looked at Mo Rushi and Nyetian respectively and said with a smile. Mo Rushi and Nyetian nodded lightly. Both of them were also looking forward to the process of creating the elemental meridians. Corpse Luo Demon Monarch controlled Cher, and the latter's figure slowly rose into the air, slowly entering the 3 lives spirit gathering formation. The instant she entered the spiritual array, Cher suddenly felt a violent force pressing down on her. Completely unable to resist, she couldn't help but let out a cry of shock before falling unconscious. Cher Luo, is Cher all right? Seeing this, Nyetian's face shuddered, and he asked anxiously, Master, don't worry. This is Miss Cher's first time absorbing the power of 3 lives. It's normal for her to have such a reaction. Corpse Luo Demon Monarch was not flustered at all. He then focused all his attention on the 3 lives spirit gathering array. Nietian held his breath and didn't speak anymore, fearing that he would disturb Corpse Luo, demon monarch. Mo Rushi stood beside Nietian and secretly held Nietian's hand. Her palms were sweating, and it was obvious that she was very nervous. Master, 3 lives grass spirit extract. After a moment, Corpse Luo, demon monarch, spoke and asked Nietian for the 3 lives grass spirit extract. Nietian took out all the 3 lives grass spirit extract and gave it to Corpse Luo, demon monarch. Corpse Luo, demon monarch, received the 3 lives grass spirit extract and immediately opened a bottle. The spirit extract slowly flowed out like a trickle, flowing in the air and slowly flowing into the 3 lives spirit gathering array. Boom! The moment the spirit extract entered the spirit gathering array, the entire spirit gathering array trembled, and a mighty force was released. The giant swords in the sky trembled at the same time, and they immediately let out a clear and intense sword cry. Wan Jian's cry. Almost at the same time, Di Tian's voice sounded, and he was very surprised. Nietian's eyes slightly narrowed, and he didn't understand what Di Tian meant. 3 lives meridians, Wan Jian's resonance. Could it be that the 3 lives one is going to... Di Tian was very shocked, and his voice actually became extremely frightened, as if he was very panic-stricken. Di Tian, what exactly happened? Nietian's face sank, and he growled. Looking at Di Tian's reaction, it seemed like something very terrifying was going to happen. However, Di Tian's voice disappeared, and he could no longer be found. Damn it! Nietian cursed inwardly, and his whole face was extremely gloomy. If something happened to Cher, even if he had to give up his fiend god origin embryo, he must kill Di Tian. If it wasn't for Di Tian, Nietian wouldn't have created an essence meridian for Cher at this time. Now that something abnormal happened, and this guy actually slipped away, how can Nietian not be angry? Master, Lady Cher's body seems to be abnormal. Corpse Devil Monarch also discovered something at this time, and he exclaimed, Corpse Devil Monarch, don't panic. Follow the original process of creating the essence meridian. Nietian calmed down and said solemnly. The 3 lives spirit convergence formation was already laid out, and the 3 lives grass spiritual fluid was also integrated into the spirit formation. Cher was in a coma, so even if something abnormal happened, they still had to continue. All right, Corpse Devil Monarch calmed down, and he opened another bottle of 3 lives grass spiritual fluid, and the power of the spiritual fluid was integrated into the 3 lives spirit convergence formation. Boom! Immediately after, the 3 lives spirit convergence formation shook even more violently, and the huge swords in the sky trembled nonstop. The entire Wanjian soul tomb was filled with terrifying sword cries. Wong! The sword cries lingered on incessantly, and those huge swords seemed to have become berserk all of a sudden. They shook crazily, and a terrifying sword intent aura was released. The entire heaven and earth trembled under the sword intent. What exactly is going on? Nietian's brows furrowed even tighter, and his expression was extremely gloomy. He felt that the space was filled with terrifying sword intent aura, and it actually caused the sword intent in his body to become restless, as though it was resonating, and he was unable to control the sword intent in his body. There were tens of thousands of sword Dao inheritances here, which meant that there were tens of thousands of sword intents. With so many sword intents resonating together, there was bound to be one that matched the frequency of Nietian's sword intent, which stimulated the sword intent in his body to resonate. Cher, Mo Rushi didn't know what was going on, and she couldn't help but hold Nietian's hand tightly. Her face was covered in sweat, and she had a worried expression. I'm fine. Nietian held Mo Rushi's hand and said solemnly. Although he said so, Nietian didn't have the slightest confidence in his heart, and he didn't know what would happen next. The corpse demon lord was extremely nervous, but he also didn't understand what was going on in front of him. He could only follow the method that the sword elder had taught him, and continued to open up the 3 lives grass spirit liquid and continuously infuse it into the 3 lives spirit gathering array. When the 3 lives grass spirit liquid in the corpse demon lord's hand was completely used up, the 3 lives spirit gathering array's power was completely stimulated to a berserk state, and one could even clearly see the existence of the 3 lives spirit gathering array. Nietion's holographic divine glyph was activated, and he was constantly monitoring the state of Cher's body. The 3 lives spirit force surged around Cher's body like a vortex, and it was filled with extremely terrifying life force. Cher was still unconscious, and she had no idea what was happening in the outside world. Nietion and the others' nerves were stretched taut, and they stared at the 3 lives spirit gathering array in a daze. "Master, I'm done. If everything is normal, Miss Cher's body has already started to nurture the Yuan Meridian," the corpse demon lord said with a trembling voice, but he was extremely unconfident in his own words. Chi chi chi. The 3 lives spirit gathering array kept emitting ear-piercing sounds, and the vortexes formed by the 3 lives spirit gathering array actually began to condense. Chapter 1270. What is that? Mo Rushi couldn't help but exclaim when she saw the snake-like meridian of 3 lives. "It's the meridian of 3 lives." Before she could finish her sentence, the corpse demon lord screamed in excitement. The Sword Elder had once described to the corpse demon lord that Cher's body was nurturing the meridian of 3 lives. The long snake that appeared in the spiritual array was the meridian of 3 lives. The meridian of 3 lives? Nietion frowned slightly. He locked his divine sense on the snake-like Yuan meridian and carefully sensed its aura. The meridian of 3 lives was very similar to an ordinary martial artist's Yuan meridian, but it was more powerful and its aura was more majestic. It constantly released a violent life aura, and there was even a faint rune-like power surging around it. It was extremely terrifying. Such a powerful aura. Nietion's heart couldn't help but tremble. He was deeply shocked. The meridian of 3 lives was the most powerful Yuan meridian he had ever seen. It was even stronger than a heavenly emperor's Yuan meridian. It was a newborn Yuan meridian, which was equivalent to the Yuan meridian of a martial artist's first awakening. Nietion could feel the power of the meridian of 3 lives, and his forehead was covered in beads of sweat. He could feel that the meridian of 3 lives was not much weaker than his supreme dragon meridian. In terms of life force, it was even stronger than the supreme dragon meridian. Among all the Yuan meridian that Nietion had seen, only the 10th Yuan meridian formed from the star Raw Stone was stronger than the meridian of 3 lives. Another one. Mo Rushi's voice suddenly sounded again, and her face was full of shock. Huh? Nietion was slightly stunned. He immediately discovered that another meridian of 3 lives had appeared in the spiritual array, and it was exactly the same as the previous one. Nietion remembered that he had refined thousands of 3 lives grass to obtain the 3 lives grass spirit fluid. Moreover, each 3 lives grass was at least 10,000 years old, and its life force was unimaginable. Nietion looked at the 2 meridian of 3 lives and was extremely nervous. He knew that the meridian of 3 lives had just formed, and there would be more appearing. At that moment, with the appearance of the meridian of 3 lives, the cries of the swords in Wan Jian's soul tomb became even more terrifying. It was like the cries of 10,000 beasts filling the space, causing the entire world to tremble. The giant sword in the sky trembled crazily, as if it had received some kind of summon, violent and strange. At this moment, Nietion suddenly felt that the sword Dao inheritance on the giant sword seemed to have become violent. Waves of surging sword intent were released, and endless sword light shot out. The entire world became colorful, very dazzling and beautiful. Nietion's heart trembled. He didn't know what was going on, but he felt an inexplicable throbbing in his heart. He had a vague feeling that something terrible was about to happen. Following that, more meridian of 3 lives appeared, and the Sword Dao inheritance in Wan Jian's soul tomb became more and more violent. The entire world was filled with a terrifying aura, as if the end of the world was coming. Nietian, Mo Rushi's face was a little pale, and she couldn't help but lean on Nietian. Nietian's nerves were tense, and his whole body was dripping with cold sweat. Master, the ninth meridian of 3 lives has appeared. At a certain moment, the corpse demon lord's excited voice sounded. All 9 meridians have appeared. Next, it should be time to merge with Cher's body. Nietian said lightly, and his eyes kept flickering. However, the next moment, the strangest scene happened. The meridian of 3 lives was like a long snake, crimson and crystal clear, releasing an extremely terrifying aura of life. Suddenly, a crack appeared on the meridian of 3 lives, and then the whole thing split open. One meridian of 3 lives, strangely, turned into 3. The 9 meridian of 3 lives instantly became 27. 27 meridian of 3 lives. Seeing this scene, Nietian was completely stunned, and he couldn't believe the scene in front of him. Within the spirit convergence array, a total of 27 meridian of 3 lives appeared. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Nietian definitely wouldn't have believed the scene in front of him. Meridian of 3 lives, 1 meridian of 3 lives, 1 meridian of 3 transformations. At this moment, Indra's voice suddenly sounded, bringing with it a huge shock. When Nietian heard Indra's voice again, he was completely speechless. Things had reached this stage, and it was absolutely unimaginable to him. 9 meridian of 3 lives, 1 meridian of 3 lives would become 27 meridian of 3 lives. Could it be that Cher's body would nurture 27 meridian of 3 lives? Sakura, what the hell is going on? Nietian calmed down a little and asked in a low voice. Don't be anxious. Take your time, and you'll know very soon. Indra's voice was low, and he seemed to be somewhat disappointed. Master, the meridian of 3 lives has started to enter Lady Cher's body. At this moment, Corpse Demon Monarch's voice sounded, and he was abnormally excited. Nietian's eyes darkened. Indeed, he saw the meridian of 3 lives slowly flowing into Cher's body. Cher was lying flat in the spiritual array, and she was in an unconscious state. However, her body was constantly releasing surging life force. 1, 2, 3, 9, 27. In almost an instant, all 27 meridian of 3 lives flowed into Cher's body. The blood-red meridian of 3 lives was like a long river of blood, surging in Cher's body and slowly fusing with her body. Nietian's expression was horrified, and he didn't even dare to blink, fearing that something abnormal would happen to Cher. Fortunately, there were no abnormalities in Cher's body. The 27 meridian of 3 lives had perfectly fused with her body, and the surging life force was shocking. Is the creation of the meridian over? Nietian sensed that the meridian of 3 lives had completely fused, and he couldn't help but be stunned. Everything seemed to be going unexpectedly smoothly. Over. Just as he finished speaking, Indra's voice sounded, and he said, "This is just the beginning." Nietian was stunned, and in the next moment, he discovered that the 27 meridian of 3 lives in Cher's body had actually started to slowly fuse together. He immediately reacted. It seemed that after the 1 meridian of 3 lives had transformed, the 3 meridian of 3 lives would once again fuse together. The meridian of 3 lives. The 3 meridians are born together, and the 3 meridians are fused together. Indra's voice sounded low and cold. Nietian was stunned, and he already didn't know how to express the shock in his heart. The meridian of 3 lives. What kind of terrifying meridian was this? It was actually so strange. The process of the 3 meridians fusing together was extremely slow. Bit by bit, the meridian of 3 lives merged with each other, and they permeated each other. Once the 27 meridian of 3 lives fuse into 9 meridians, the creation of the meridian of 3 lives will be considered complete. Nietian let out a long breath of impure air and murmured, "Rumble." However, at this moment, An endless roar suddenly came from the sky. Those giant swords shook even more violently, and the entire space trembled unceasingly. Endless sword intent was released even more violently. Chapter 1271. Nyetion's eyebrows furrowed, and his expression flickered. The Sword Dao inheritance went out of control and charged toward the Three Lives spirit-gathering array. Whoosh! In an instant, the sword will landed on the spiritual formation, but it did not break it. Instead, it fused with the spiritual formation. Nyetion was dumbfounded and couldn't utter a word. The sword will in the spiritual formation turned into a ball of light and surged into Cher's body. She's fusing her sword intent, Nyetion exclaimed in astonishment. Snow was clearly absorbing the power of the Sword Dao inheritance. Mo Rushi and Corpse Luo Demon Monarch were also stunned on the spot, completely speechless. Boom, boom, boom. Following that, more Sword Dao inheritance went out of control and turned into sword will that surged toward the Three Lives spirit-gathering array. Schwer is going to... Nyetion suddenly came to a realization. His expression stiffened and he was petrified. In the next moment, thousands of sword will moved at the same time. The sky was filled with sword will, and the sword light flashed as if stars were falling from the sky. If other swordsmen saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked. The scene was too shocking. Thousands of Sword Dao inheritance resonated at the same time, causing the sky to shake and the weather to change. Countless sword will surged into the Three Lives spirit-gathering array and turned into balls of sword will that surged into Cher's body. The whole process happened in the blink of an eye. All the Sword Dao inheritance disappeared in the blink of an eye, leaving only the giant swords floating in the air. Schwershi, after an unknown period of time, Nyetion finally reacted slightly and muttered to himself. He already knew what had happened. Cher had fused thousands of Sword Dao inheritances at once. That's right. All the Sword Dao inheritances in Wan Jian's soul tomb had been absorbed by Cher. This was too shocking and unbelievable. These Sword Dao inheritances were left behind by ancient godly swordsmen. Any one of them could reach the peak of the sword world. Cher had fused over 10,000 Sword Dao inheritances in one go. How terrifying would her strength be in the future? At this time, Wan Jian's soul tomb had already completely regained its peace. The Three Lives spirit-gathering formation was slowly absorbing the power of Three Lives, slowly surging into Cher's body, accelerating the fusion of her Yuan meridians and sword intent. Cher lay quietly in the middle of the Three Lives spirit convergence formation. Her face was calm, and there was nothing unusual about it. Master, Lady Schwer was... Corpse Demon King finally reacted. His voice was trembling. He was obviously shocked to the extreme. And Nyetion let out a long sigh, and his face relaxed completely. At this time, he suddenly understood why Sakura disappeared midway. It must be because he couldn't stand the scene in front of him. He had originally created these sword arts inheritances with his own hands, and he wanted to use the power of these inheritances to break through to the divine path. However, these Sword Dao inheritances were actually absorbed by Cher alone. How could Sakura endure this? Sakura, Cher's already fine, right? Nyetion opened his mouth slowly and was very happy. Of course she's fine. Sakura's voice was very depressed. These were all his Sword Dao inheritances, but they were absorbed by others in front of his eyes. How could his heart not ache? In fact, Sakura had noticed this from the beginning, but he couldn't accept it for a while, so he didn't say anything. Sakura, I want to know what's going on. Although Nyetion knew that Cher absorbed all the Sword Dao inheritances, he didn't know how it happened. Sigh. Sakura let out a long sigh, but he still said, these Sword Dao inheritances have existed in Wan Jian's soul tomb for hundreds of thousands of years, and they are permeated with the power of Three Lives. When the Three Lives spirit-gathering formation condensed the power of Three Lives, it stimulated the power of Three Lives in the Sword Dao inheritance and triggered the resonance of Wan Jian. The appearance of the girl's meridians of Three Lives also pushed the resonance of Wan Jian to the extreme. In an instant, she was recognized by all the Sword Dao inheritances, so she absorbed all the Sword Dao inheritances. When he said these words, Sakura was obviously very sad. He was still counting on using these Sword Dao inheritances to create a city and set foot on the divine path, but now it was completely hopeless. So that's how it is. Tian nodded slightly and said, "Can Cher's body bear so many Sword Dao inheritances?" "Of course it can." Sakura blurted out without hesitation and said, "The meridians of 3 lives has an extremely terrifying power of life, and it can integrate any power. This girl's meridians of 3 lives is very powerful, and it's enough to bear the power of these Sword Dao inheritances." But what? Tian's eyes trembled, and he asked in surprise, "But if she wants to completely integrate these Sword Dao inheritances, it will take a very long time. I estimate that she won't wake up in a short time." Sakura sighed and said in his heart, "It's not necessarily a bad thing for her to fall into a coma. Then how long will it take for her to wake up?" Tian frowned slightly, and he couldn't help but look worried. He knew that an ordinary swordsman would need a few hours or even a few days to integrate a Sword Dao inheritance. Based on this, wouldn't it take a few years or even a few decades for Cher to integrate tens of thousands of Sword Dao inheritances? The power of the meridians of 3 lives is very strong. If it's fast, it will take a few months, but if it's slow, it will only take a few years, Sakura said faintly. A few years? Tian was stunned. Although it wasn't a long time, it caught him off guard. The sage imprint in Mo Rushi's body was getting stronger and stronger, and yet Tian was still hoping that Cher could help him suppress it. But now it seemed that this idea was not feasible. A few years is already very short. If an ordinary person integrated so many Sword Dao inheritances, I'm afraid it will take at least a few decades or even a few hundred years. Sakura was very disappointed, and there was a hint of sadness in his voice. And yet Tian frowned. Then he looked at Corpse Demon Lord and said, "How long can the 3 lives spirit gathering array last?" Corpse Demon Lord just said that under normal circumstances, it would only take 3 days to create the elemental meridians, but now it would take a few months or even a few years. Yet Tian was worried that the 3 lives spirit gathering array couldn't last. "Master, rest assured, the 3 lives spirit gathering array can continuously absorb the power of 3 lives. As long as there is enough power of 3 lives in the 3 lives stone, this array can last forever." Corpse Demon Lord knew what Tian was worried about, so he replied very seriously, "That's good." Tian smiled faintly, and his eyebrows relaxed a little. "Tian, you have to quickly find a way to suppress the sage imprint in that girl's body. She can't last long." Sakura's voice sounded and then disappeared, as if he was not willing to appear. Tian let out a long sigh. Then he looked at Mo Rushi and said, "Rushi, let's go out first. Corpse Demon Lord will be fine here." Cher was temporarily not in danger, and Corpse Demon Lord was enough to look after her, but Mo Rushi was in a bit of trouble. Tian and Mo Rushi left the 3 lives stone, and Tian directly put the 3 lives stone into the chaotic original coffin with a thought. "Tian, don't worry, I'll be fine." Mo Rushi looked at Tian and said indifferently, knowing what he was worried about, "Rushi, I won't let anything happen to you." Tian nodded heavily, but in his heart, he had decided to go to the demonic devouring abyss tomorrow. The man in black asked Tian to go to the demonic devouring abyss, saying that someone was waiting for him. At this time, Tian suddenly frowned. He felt a terrifying aura appear. Chapter 1272. It's that person. Tian sensed a familiar aura. It was the black-robed man who fought with Mao Xianglong and Song Shanxue. He frowned and tensed up. This person was extremely powerful and was at the peak of his strength. "Tian, what's wrong?" Mo Rushi did not notice anything unusual, but when she saw Tian's expression, her beautiful eyes flickered and she asked, "Someone's coming." Tian nodded slightly and motioned for Mo Rushi to stand behind him. Lord Ao Jian, I didn't expect your perception to be so strong after your rebirth. A mocking voice was heard from the void. It was the black-robed man. I didn't expect you to have the guts to come back either. Nie Tian smiled faintly and calmed down. Even if he was no match for the black-robed man, he could at least block a few moves from him. Once Tsang Shanxue and the others noticed something unusual, they would definitely appear. Lord Ao Jian. As soon as Nie Tian's voice fell, a powerful voice was heard. It was Tsang Shanxue, who was more vigilant than Nie Tian had imagined. Heaven Wasteland Hall Master, you're really haunting me. I really don't know what benefits Nie Tian gave you to make you willing to be a guard. The black-clothed man chuckled. He did not panic in the slightest, and instead, he was full of ridicule. That's my business. You don't have to worry about it. Tsang Shanxue replied coldly. He knew that the other party was a peak expert, so he did not dare to be careless. Nie Tian glanced at Tsang Shanxue and nodded slightly. He did not expect the latter to be so responsible. Nie Tian sensed that the black-robed man did not want to fight, so he motioned for Tsang Shanxue to calm down. You must have something to tell me since you've returned. Just say it. Nie Tian did not beat around the bush and said directly. The black-robed man knew that the Divine Cold Palace had Mao Xianglong, Du Danfeng, and Tsang Shanxue, but he still came back. He must have a purpose. Lord Ao Jian, I've told you before. Someone wants to see you. He's anxious, so he asked me to hurry him. I have to guarantee that you will definitely go to the devil-devouring abyss. The man in black said with a faint smile. Nie Tian narrowed his eyes and smiled. I want to know, who wants to see me? The black-robed man froze for a moment, seemingly thinking about something. Then he suddenly raised his hand and a flash of light whizzed out. Nie Tian reacted very quickly and reached out to grab it. It was actually a token. This is... Nie Tian looked at the token in his hand, and his face stiffened. The token was dark black with a hint of dark red, and there was a strange power surging on it. It was extremely strange. He's the one who wants to see you. The man in black said solemnly. 9 Underworld, Demon Emperor, Qi Wuxia Ocean. Nie Tian calmed down slightly, and a voice rang out in his mind. He never expected that the person who wanted to see him would be the 9 Darkness Demon Emperor. The token that the black-robed man threw to him was Qi Wuxia Ocean's 9 Darkness token, which was a token that only Qi Wuxia Ocean possessed. In Nie Tian's previous life, he had a life-and-death battle with Qi Wuxia Ocean, and the location was in the Day-Night realm. Qi Wuxia Ocean was the person who possessed one of the 10 most powerful seals, the Devil-Devouring Seal. He used the Devil-Devouring Seal to completely destroy the continent within 1,000 miles of the Day-Night realm. Time and space collapsed, and finally, it became an abyss of nothingness. And that abyss was the Devil-Devouring Abyss. The Devil-Devouring Abyss was a forbidden area in the Day-Night realm, and Qi Wuxia Ocean actually wanted to meet him there. After the battle, Nie Tian thought that Qi Wuxia Ocean was already dead, but he didn't expect that the latter was still alive. Could it be? At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly thought of something, and his face sank, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. The black-robed man in front of him mentioned the sage's mark, and also told Nie Tian that if he wanted Mo Rushi and Share to live, he had to go to the Devil-Devouring Abyss. Didn't this mean that Qi Wuxia Ocean was the person who left the sage's mark on Mo Rushi? The sage's mark was done by Qi Wuxia Ocean? Nie Tian suddenly raised his head, and his eyes flickered with coldness. Nie Tian, you're no match for me now. If I want to leave, no one could stop me. If you want to know the truth, then go to the Devil-Devouring Abyss. As the black-robed man spoke, he glanced at Mo Rushi with a gloomy face and said in a cold tone, You don't have much time left. Cherish it. With that, the black-robed man moved and left directly. Tsang Shanxue wanted to chase after him, but he was stopped by Nie Tian. The black-robed man was right. With his strength, no one could stop him. If Tsang Shanxue chased after him, he might even be in danger. Lord Ao Jian, the girl beside you can't hold on any longer. Hurry up and make a decision. At this moment, the black-robed man's voice sounded again, and he used the same method as last time, leaving behind a remnant soul consciousness, and then dissipated. Nietion stood in the same place, and his face was extremely gloomy. Originally, Cher could perfectly suppress the sage's mark, but unfortunately, she was in a deep sleep. The sage's mark in Mo Rushi's body was getting stronger and stronger, and if she did not find a way to suppress it, it would be very dangerous. Lord Ao Jian, are you really going to the devil-devouring abyss? Song Shanchua saw Nietion's gloomy face and could not help but ask. Yes, Nietion nodded. This time, he must completely get rid of the sage's mark and not let Mo Rushi be in danger. And from the black-robed man's tone, it seemed that Chi Wuxiaoshan was very anxious to see him. Could Chi Wuxiaoshan be the person who left the sage's mark on Mo Rushi? Hall mastered Song. The two of them do not need your protection for the time being. You should return to the Heaven Wasteland Palace first. Nietion looked at Song Shanchua and suddenly thought of something, and said, I have now thought of the second matter, and I would like to ask the Heaven Wasteland Palace for help in investigating a matter. Lord Ao Jian, please speak. Song Shanchua's eyes flickered involuntarily. What was it that made Nietion so concerned that he actually wanted to use the agreement between him and the Heaven Wasteland Palace? I would like to ask the Heaven Wasteland Palace to investigate who killed Lord Long Xiao back then, Nietion said in a deep voice. Lord Long Xiao. Song Shanchua was stunned for a moment, but then he thought of the relationship between Nietion and Long Outyin and understood. Long Xiao was also one of the top experts in the Heaven Realm back then, but he later died for no reason. It was very bizarre. Lord Ao Jian, this matter happened 200 years ago, and I'm afraid it will not be easy to investigate. I can't guarantee that I will be able to find out, but I'll try my best. Song Shanchua said hesitantly. The matter was too long ago, and even if the Heaven Wasteland Palace was powerful, it would not be easy to investigate. Thank you. Nietion nodded slightly and said, regardless of whether there is any news about this matter, the Heaven Wasteland Palace has completed the second matter. All right, Song Shanchua agreed and left without staying any longer. Nietion, are you really going to the demonic devouring abyss? Mo Rushi looked worriedly at Nietion. Although she did not know where it was, she could guess that it was definitely a dangerous trip. Yes. Nietion nodded with a smile and pulled Mo Rushi into his arms. Chapter 1273. The next morning, in a small courtyard of the Divine Cold Palace, Nietion walked out of the room with Mo Rushi following closely behind. Her delicate face was flushed red like a ripe cherry, making one want to pounce on her and take 300 bites. After a night, Nietion prepared to leave the Divine Cold Palace today and head to the demonic devouring abyss. The sage imprint on Mo Rushi could flare up at any time, so Nietion prepared to bring her along to prevent any accidents. Fortunately, Nietion still had some illusion flower blood lotus spirit liquid on him, which could help Mo Rushi suppress the sage imprint. Nietion brought Mo Rushi to the Divine Cold Palace and bade farewell to Mao Xianglong and Chengju. Teacher, you're going to the demonic devouring abyss? Hearing that Nietion was going to the demonic devouring abyss, Chengju could not help but become nervous. That place is already a forbidden area of the day-night sacred domain. I heard that there are powerhouses guarding it, and there are even many killing arrays. It is not easy to enter. I know, but I must go on this trip. Nietion nodded slightly, his eyes incomparably firm. Big brother, I will go with you. Long Outyin laughed and said, Isn't it just the demonic devouring abyss? Whoever dares to stop us, we will kill them directly. Nietion nodded slightly. He originally wanted to let Long Outyin accompany him. Mao Xianglong could not leave the Divine Cold Palace, and Chengju was too weak. Du Danfeng had always been laid back. It was really a little difficult to let him accompany Nietion. Teacher, since you have decided to go, then be careful. Chengju nodded heavily. He knew that he was too weak and could not help Nietion. He had a guilty look on his face. Nietion looked at Chengju. His divine sense swept across the latter's body and found that his essence meridians were still a little stiff. There was even a blockage in his spirit energy. It was already very difficult for Chengju to recover to the strength of a first-level heavenly emperor. Maybe after Cher wakes up, her blood can solve the problem of Chengju's spirit meridians. Nie Tian secretly said in his heart. He did not have any good ideas at the moment, because he did not know much about the Dragon Sun destruction body. Cher's blood was extremely miraculous, containing extremely terrifying life force. Perhaps it could help Chengju. Nie Tian and the rest did not waste any more time. They immediately left the divine cold palace and set off for the devil-devouring abyss. The demonic devouring abyss was located at the border between the East River Divine Region and the Daynite Divine Region. It wasn't very far from Divine Cold City. Big brother, where's the other sister-in-law? On the way, Long Outyin couldn't help but ask when he realized that Mo Rushi was alone. Nie Tian was slightly embarrassed, but he still said, Cher is recuperating. Long Outyin chuckled, then sighed and said, Big brother, you're really good. Both sisters-in-law are more beautiful than the other. Why don't I Long Outyin have such a good life? Nie Tian was speechless. Outyin, Chengju just said that the devil-devouring abyss is guarded by experts. What does that mean? Nie Tian suddenly remembered Chengju's words and couldn't help but ask. Long Outyin frowned, as if he was very dissatisfied. He said loudly, Back then, when Big Brother and the Demon Emperor fought, the continent within 1,000 li directly collapsed, creating the devil-devouring abyss today. After that, the devil-devouring abyss became one of the forbidden areas of the heaven realm. The strange thing is Luo Chanhun sent many experts to guard the entrance of the devil-devouring abyss, not allowing anyone to enter. So it's like that. Nie Tian frowned. He couldn't understand why Luo Chanhun would do that. Normal forbidden areas only didn't allow ordinary martial artists to enter. If there was a fugitive who wanted to go in and die, no one would stop him. For a place like the devil-devouring abyss, why would they send people to guard it? Could it be that there was some secret hidden inside? Chi Wu, Xiaotian asked me to meet at the devil-devouring abyss. This is interesting. Nie Tian laughed in his heart, but he didn't think too much about it. 2 days later, Nie Tian and the other two appeared outside a continuous mountain range. Big brother, after crossing this mountain range, we will reach the Daynite celestial domain. Long Outyin laughed, appearing very excited. All right. Nie Tian looked at the continuous mountain range in front of him, feeling a little complicated. After more than 100 years, he returned to his homeland. This kind of feeling was hard to describe. The Daynite celestial domain was adjacent to the East River celestial domain, and on the other side was connected to the 9 underworlds demon world. The reason why the Daynite celestial domain could cover such a large area was because of Nie Tian's power. In the past, he led the war god army to fight against the demon world's army for 300 times and never tasted defeat. He even forced the 9 underworlds demon world to retreat to the even darker 9 underworlds abyss. But in the end, he died in the hands of the Daynite emperor. This kind of ending made people sigh. Nie Tian and the other two crossed the mountain range in front of them and quickly entered the Daynite celestial domain. The 3 of them flew in the sky at an extremely fast speed, and soon a majestic ancient city appeared under their feet. Big brother, this is the devouring devil city. The entrance to the devouring devil abyss is in the city. Long Outyin looked at the ancient city and said to Nie Tian, All right, let's enter the city now. Nie Tian nodded slightly and looked into the distance. Behind the ancient city was a pitch-black abyss that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was the devouring devil abyss. The devouring devil abyss was formed when Angel Chi Wuxiao used the devouring devil seal to destroy the continent. The abyss was filled with terrifying space-time whirlpools. If one were to enter directly from the sky, they would fall into a space-time whirlpool if they were not careful. Therefore, the safest way was to enter the abyss through the entrance of the devouring devil city. Nietion and the others landed at the entrance of the devouring devil city. "Who are you?" The three of them had just appeared when two figures appeared, blocking their way. "We are passers-by, and we want to enter the devouring devil city to rest for a few days." Nietion smiled faintly, but his eyes were fixed on the golden tokens on their waists. Seeing the golden token, Nietion's eyes could not help but tremble violently, because he was too familiar with this token. It was the token of the ancient divine guards. The ancient divine guards were the most elite troops under Nietion in his previous life. Every one of them had the strength of a fifth-level heavenly emperor, and their combat strength was far stronger than ordinary fifth-level heavenly emperors. If they joined forces, they would be even more terrifying. Back then, Long Outyen had been chased by the ancient divine guards, and he was forced to come to the War God Hall to admit his mistake. Nietion did not expect that the elite troops he had built in his previous life would be used by Luo Chenhun to guard the devouring devil abyss. Passers-by, one of them took a cold look at Nietion and said coldly, "Don't you know that outsiders are not allowed to step foot in the devouring devil city?" Nietion's eyes darkened slightly. This was something he did not expect. It seemed that Luo Chenhun was very concerned about the devouring devil abyss, and the security was so tight. However, right at this moment, the other person laughed weirdly and stared at Mo Rushi with undisguised lust flickering in his eyes. He chuckled and said, "If you make this lady stay with us, we can enter the city. Moreover, you can stay as long as you want in devouring devil city." "Huh?" Nietion's face darkened, and he suddenly looked at the person who spoke. A sharp chill was suddenly released, and his killing intent was revealed. He did not expect that the ancient divine guards, who had always been disciplined, would produce such scum. Chapter 1274. Nietion and the rest were stopped by two desolate ancient divine guards at Fiend Swallow City city gates. One of them profaned Mo Rushi with words, arousing Nietion's killing intent. Amen. That person detected the cold, killing intent in Nietion's eyes and could not help being taken aback. Following that, he looked at Nietion and actually smiled coldly and said, "Stinking brat, this place is Fiend Swallow City, guarded by desolate ancient divine guards. There are 1,000 desolate ancient divine guards in the city. Could it be that you still want to make a move?" "Desolate ancient divine guards, is it?" Nietionling replied coldly, but the killing intent in his eyes became even stronger. But that person was not afraid and said, "Stinking brat, do you know what desolate ancient divine guards represent?" Thinking about the Heaven Realm's #1 war god back then, it relied on desolate ancient divine guards to be invincible and advance courageously. To dare oppose desolate ancient divine guards, you're courting death here. When the final word death fell, that person's face actually revealed thick killing intent too. In his view, Nietion was young, merely around 20 years old. His strength was very limited. Rather, the skinny Long Outyen seemed to be a character. But this was also nothing. He was not afraid in the slightest, because this place was Fiend Swallow City. If someone dared to make a move here, that was truly courting death. The strength of 1,000 desolate ancient divine guards could faintly compare to a peak heavenly emperor martial artist. Unless Long Outyen was a peak heavenly emperor powerhouse, otherwise, once he made a move, it would be courting death. The one courting death is you. Suddenly, Nietion opened his mouth in a low voice, his expression grim to the extreme. A hint of starlight flashed across his eyes. Immediately, a powerful mental deterrence was released. The invisible mental oppression actually caused slight undulations in the void, activating absolute tremor. That desolate ancient divine guard who made impertinent remarks was hit on the spot. His eyes suddenly turned sluggish and instantly became hollow. His entire person's divine sense directly collapsed. Nietion was currently 7th level Heavenly Emperor strength, awakening 370 billion stellar power within his body. The formidable power of the Eye of the Starry Sky was unimaginable. He was less than 5 meters away from this desolate ancient divine guard. Unleashing absolute tremor at such a close distance, Even ordinary 9th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artists could not resist it either. The primordial divine guard fainted on the ground. When he regained consciousness, he would be a fool. The collapse of the divine sense, unless there was a rank 9 spirit restoring pill to treat it. Otherwise, there was no way to recover. What did you do to him? The other primordial divine guard screamed in fear, his face drained of all color. Everything was too strange. He only saw a flash of light in Yetion's eyes, and then his companion fell. Just who was this silver-haired youth? How could he be so terrifying? Brat, you'd better not move recklessly. Otherwise, I will definitely not show mercy. In the next moment, a black skeletal hand grabbed the primordial divine guard's neck. Long Outyin smiled cold and threatened. The man looked at Long Outyin in fear and didn't dare to move again. Still a step too late. But the Nye Tian by the side shook his head slightly, his expression somewhat helpless. He only wanted to enter the city quietly, but the other party did not allow it. His voice had just faded when several dozen figures arrived in the air, directly surrounding Nye Tian and the rest. These people were all primordial divine guards. Each and every one of their auras powerful, their strengths all above 5th-level Heavenly Emperor. One of them had an especially powerful aura, already reaching 8th-level Heavenly Emperor cultivation. Nye Tian took a look at that person's waist token and immediately recognized that this person was a captain of the Primordial Divine Guards. The Primordial Divine Guards had an extremely strict ranking system. Only martial artists whose strength reached 8th-level Heavenly Emperor and above had the qualifications to be a captain, while the 4 great commanders required 9th-level Heavenly Emperor strength. Your Excellency, save me. When that controlled Primordial Divine Guard saw the reinforcements arrive, he could not help crying out in shock. Where did this lunatic come from? What gall to actually dare behave atrociously in fiend-devouring city. That captain did not pay attention to his subordinate's cry for help. A pair of furious eyes swept past Nye Tian and Long Outyin, his entire body releasing a berserk aura. Get lost. Nye Tian gave that captain a glance and did not go and explain anything at all, directly roaring angrily. A terrifying sword intent howled out, assaulting the other party. The power of sword intent bloomed in the air. The sword light shot out a glaring sword light, roaring and roaring. That captain cried out in surprise, clearly not expecting Nye Tian to be so domineering, directly attacking without even saying a word. He wanted to make a move to counterattack, but was already a step too late and was directly struck by the sword shadow. His figure flew out backward, smashing heavily onto the city wall. The entire city wall shook with a loud bang, seemingly about to collapse. How can your strength be? Puwerk. That captain crawled up from the ground. He had yet to finish saying his sentence when he spewed out a mouthful of fresh blood wildly, his complexion instantly turning deathly pale. He detected that Nye Tian clearly only had 7th-level Heavenly Emperor strength. So how could he be so terrifying? Not even using the sword, beating him until he did not have the slightest strength to retaliate. I want to enter the city. Nye Tian gave him a glance and said coldly, in this world, strength was always number one. Without strength, saying anything was useless. Nye Tian did not wish to waste time here and was also worried that it would attract more primordial divine guards. If that was the case, it would be terrible. That sword earlier was just a deterrent. If he was willing, that captain would already be a corpse. Enter the city? That captain's gaze flickered a little, but then he wiped away the bloodstains at the corners of his mouth and roared angrily. Everyone listen up. Stop this person. This person was very hot-blooded and also very responsible. Even when facing Nye Tian's domineeringness, he still did not give an inch. Nye Tian's brows furrowed slightly, not expecting that this person would actually have such an action. Stop. But right at this time, a low and deep voice sounded out. Following that, a figure stepped over in the air, a surging aura forming a powerful pressure, pressing down from high up in the sky. Lord Commander. The captain looked at the newcomer and was stunned for a moment. Then, he respectfully saluted. The other primordial divine guards also immediately bowed, very respectful. Lin Ling. Nietian suddenly raised his head and looked at the arrival, but was stunned, calling out a name in his heart. The arrival was a middle-aged man with a resolute expression, his aura powerful. He was actually 9th level Heavenly Emperor strength. Furthermore, he was far stronger than ordinary 9th level Heavenly Emperor martial artists, seemingly about the same as Long Outyin. But when Nietian saw the arrival, he had a look of pleasant surprise. He did not expect that the arrival was actually an acquaintance, one of the primordial divine guard's 4 great commanders, Lin Ling. Lin Ling was single-handedly promoted by Nietian back then, so he was rather familiar with the former. "It's you." Long Outyin was also slightly taken aback. Recognizing Lin Ling, "You guys can withdraw." Lin Ling gave Long Outyin a glance, clearly recognizing the latter. But he did not bat an eyelid and just said coolly to the other primordial divine guards. That captain had yet to figure out what was going on. Taking a step forward, he said indignantly, "Lord Commander, these few people trespassed fiend swallowing city and even injured our brothers. Please stand down." Lin Ling directly interrupted his words, his deep voice mixed with a trace of oppressive aura. That person was stunned, looking at Lin Ling with a puzzled look, not knowing what was going on. Chapter 1275. Lin Ling. Long Outyin saw Lin Ling chase everyone away and chuckled. "I didn't expect Demon Swallowing City to be guarded by you. That's great. Lord Long, this is not a place you should be in. You should leave." However, Lin Ling's reaction was unusually cold. He glanced at Long Outyin and spoke in a deep voice. He heard that Long Outyin had died in the hands of Emperor Chenin. Now that he suddenly appeared in Demon Swallowing City, he was surprised. Of course, he knew that Long Outyin was Nietian's sworn brother. Because of this, he let Long Outyin's group leave. Otherwise, Nietian's group would be dead if they trespassed Demon Swallowing City. Nietian looked at Lin Ling, but the latter did not recognize him. "Lin Ling, you and I are old acquaintances. We want to enter the city. Please do us a favor." Long Outyin could see that Nietian did not want to expose his identity, so he chuckled and said, "Master Long, since we are old acquaintances, please do not make things difficult for me." Lin Ling's face was cold as he spoke. "Commander Lin, we have some important matters to attend to in the city. Please make an exception." Nietian stepped forward and said. Lin Ling's eyes darkened as he looked at Nietian. He did not find anything strange and said cold, "Demon Swallowing City is a forbidden region in the Heaven Realm. Others are forbidden from entering. I have a duty to fulfill. I cannot comply." Nietian couldn't help but shake his head and think to himself, Lin Ling is still as loyal as before. Nietian knew that Lin Ling was still under Luo Chenhun because he had no other choice. "Lin Ling," Nietian thought for a while and suddenly said, "What level of the Ling Yu sword tactic are you at?" Lin Ling was stunned. His eyes flickered and his face darkened as he growled, "Who are you? Why do you know the Ling Yu sword tactic? If I told you that I was the one who gave you the sword technique, would you believe me?" Nietian said with a faint smile. "Impossible." Lin Ling's expression instantly darkened. His entire body revealed a murderous intent as he said, "Lord War God has fallen. Even if you're Lord Long's friend, I won't allow you to profane him." The Ling Yu sword art was given to Lin Ling by Nietian. In Lin Ling's heart, Nietian was a supreme existence. No one was allowed to blaspheme him. Even if Nietian fell, this would not change. However, only he and Nietian knew about the soaring universe sword art. How did this silver-haired youth know about it? "Speak. Who are you?" Lin Ling's eyes were dark as he looked cold at Nietian. Boom. Nietian didn't speak, but his body shook. A surge of sword intent soared into the sky. In the void, a dazzling sword light flashed and disappeared. This is... Lin Ling was stunned. His face was astonished to the extreme. His body actually trembled, and he took a few steps back. He only reacted after a long time and said with a trembling voice, "This is Lord War God's 1,000 miles sword intent. Do you believe my identity now?" Nietian nodded slightly. His eyes were incomparably firm. His entire body released an almost overbearing confidence. You really are? Lin Ling still couldn't believe it. His voice was trembling, and he couldn't help but look at Long Outyin. Lin Ling, the person in front of you is my big brother. Long Outyin chuckled and said with a nod, Lord War God, is it really you? Lin Ling's pupils suddenly contracted. He couldn't help but soften his knees and almost knelt beside Nye Tian. He never thought that the person he respected the most was actually still alive and appeared in front of him again. Lin Ling, this isn't the place to talk. Let's talk somewhere else. Nye Tian helped Lin Ling up and said indifferently. Lin Ling nodded heavily. He calmed down a little and said with a trembling voice, Lord, please follow me. Under Lin Ling's lead, Nye Tian and the others quickly entered a majestic mansion. It was Lin Ling's residence. When everyone entered the hall, Lin Ling ordered his subordinates that without his orders, no one was allowed to take half a step near the hall. Lord War God, you're really still alive? In the hall, Lin Ling still didn't dare to believe it. It was as if he was in a dream. Nye Tian let out a soft sigh and briefly explained what had happened to him. Damn it, Lin Ling couldn't help but roar after hearing it. He said, I knew it. There must be something fishy about what happened back then. Lord War God made great contributions to the Day-Night Celestial Realm, but Luo Chunhun actually killed him. How vicious. Nye Tian smiled faintly. He didn't explain too much to Lin Ling. What happened back then was too complicated. He couldn't explain it clearly in a short time. Lin Ling, I have some things to ask you. Nye Tian motioned for Lin Ling to calm down. He said directly, the demonic devouring abyss is just an abyss of nothingness with many space-time vortexes. Why did Day-Night Emperor send you to guard this place? Nye Tian had long been puzzled by this question. It was a good time to ask Lin Ling, Lord. Lin Ling sighed deeply. He said, I also don't know the specific reason. I only heard that there's a very terrifying person imprisoned in the demonic devouring abyss. No one is allowed to go near this person. Also, Lin Ling paused and looked at Nye Tian with a burning gaze. He said, also, the demonic devouring abyss is not only guarded by the ancient divine guards. The real entrance is also guarded by the Snow God Imperial Guards. Snow God Imperial Guards. Hearing these words, Nye Tian's gaze involuntarily turned intent. He naturally knew what the Snow God Imperial Guards signified. In the Heaven Realm's divine realm, there were the 4 great divine guards. The ancient divine guards were one of them, while the Snow God Imperial Guards were even the leader of the 4 great divine guards. In the rumors, the Snow God Imperial Guards were personally groomed by the Snow Emperor. They were only known by the Snow Emperor alone. The people in the Snow God Imperial Guards were not many, but each one had 7th level Heavenly Emperor strength and above. There were even many who had 9th level Heavenly Emperor strength. The Snow God Imperial Guards were very secretive. Nye Tian had only heard before too, but had never seen before. He did not expect that a puny little demonic devouring abyss not only had the ancient divine guards, but there was actually even the Snow God Imperial Guards. You've seen the Snow God Imperial Guards before? Nye Tian became cold and asked Lin Ling. Lin Ling nodded his head solemnly. His eyes could not help flickering a little. Clearly, he was somewhat nervous as he said, I've seen before. The Snow God Imperial Guards commander, Qian Qinyu, appeared in the demonic devouring abyss. Qian Qinyu. This name made Nye Tian stupefied once more. Qian Qinyu was a very mysterious figure in the Heaven Realm's divine realm. Legends had it that this person was the Snow Emperor's personal guard, the commander of the Snow God Imperial Guards. Qian Qinyu's relationship with the Snow Emperor was very good. His son, Qian Flowing Sha, was even the Snow Emperor's personal disciple. Qian Flowing Sha was the person who entered the upper realms together with Shui Wushuang and Luo Zian. In the rumors, Qian Qinyu's strength was already peak Heavenly Emperor. He was not the slightest bit weaker than the 9 emperors. How could someone who could be chosen by the Snow Emperor to be the Snow God Imperial Guards be an ordinary figure? The Snow God Imperial Guards commander, Qian Qinyu, is actually inside the demonic devouring abyss. Just who is imprisoned inside? Nietion's eyes involuntarily flickered, incomparably surprised in his heart. Chapter 1276. Nietion suddenly thought that since the demonic engulfing abyss was so heavily guarded, the person who was imprisoned must have a very high status. He thought about how Chi Wuxioshan had asked him to meet him at the demonic engulfing abyss. Could Chi Wuxioshan be imprisoned there? The man in black had risked his life to return to the divine chill palace and told Nietion that he had to go to the demonic engulfing abyss. That was even stranger. Nietion guessed that the person imprisoned in the demonic engulfing abyss was most likely Chi Wuxioshan. Lin Ling, have you entered the demonic engulfing abyss recently? Nietion asked after calming down a little. No. Lin Ling thought for a moment and said, the demonic engulfing abyss does not allow anyone to enter. Not even Emperor Daynite. Only the Snow Empress can enter and leave freely. I see. Nietion's lips curled into a cold smile. He was even more certain of his guess. Lin Ling, I want to enter the demonic engulfing abyss. Do you have any ideas? Nietion did not stand on ceremony and asked directly. According to Lin Ling, the true guardians of the demonic engulfing abyss were not the ancient divine guards, but the snow gods' imperial guards. Even a top-tier expert like Qian Xinyu was in the demonic engulfing city. Under such circumstances, it was almost impossible for Nietion to enter the demonic engulfing abyss. With Qian Xinyu's abilities, she could kill Long Outyin in a split second, but she was close. Unless Nietion called Mo Qianjun and Zhou Qiansheng over and forced their way into the demonic engulfing abyss. However, that would mean declaring war on the Snow Empress. That was not feasible. Nietion was still accumulating his strength. Furthermore, the person imprisoned evidently did not want him to use such a method to meet him. Since Lin Ling had stayed in the demonic engulfing city for more than 100 years, he might have other ways to enter the demonic engulfing abyss. My lord, I know of a secret path into the demonic engulfing abyss. There are also snow gods' imperial guards there, but they're not very strong. If Lord Long and I join forces, we should be able to break through. Lin Ling said in a low voice. He looked at Mo Rushi worriedly. Nietion obviously knew what Lin Ling was worried about. He smiled and said, Don't worry, I have a way to ensure her safety. The Snow God Imperial Guards were not so easy to deal with. Mo Rushi's strength had increased at Mao Xianglong's place, but she was also only a third-level Heavenly Emperor, still very weak. However, Nietion could let Mo Rushi temporarily enter the 3 live stone to ensure her safety. Nietion would be able to take advantage of the fact that the 3 live stone had its own space within it to protect anyone. Tianing, Nianya Lord. He Ling said. Long of Tian Shang said. He was worried that his whereabouts would be exposed, so he had to be decisive in everything he did. Then, Nietion released the 3 live stone and let Mo Rushi enter it. Ling Mo Tian Ling said. Long Tian, and Ling said Ling Mo Tian. Tian Long Ling, Tian Ling, Tian laid Mo Long. After making arrangements for Mo Rushi, Nietion left the Lin Manor with Long Outyin and Lin Ling. With Nietion's appearance, Lin Ling was no longer the commander of the primordial Imperial Guards. He hoped to follow by Nietion's side and do something big. Nietion and Long Outyin changed into the attire of the primordial Divine Guards and followed behind Lin Ling. They did not arouse suspicion. After a while, the 3 came to a forest at the border of the demonic engulfing city. My lord, the secret path is inside the forest, Lin Ling said as he pointed at the forest ahead. At first glance, there was nothing unusual in the forest. It was very quiet. But when Nietion spread out his divine sense, the holographic divine runes probed over. The holographic projection in his mind showed that there were several powerful auras hiding in the forest. Each aura was very strong. Their strength should be at the 9th level Heavenly Emperor. Nietion sensed carefully and confirmed the location of the people hiding. But he could not help but frown. There were 6 people guarding the forest. 4 of them were scattered in 4 directions. The other 2 were hiding in the center. They should be there to provide support. If there were any abnormalities in any side, they could rush over immediately. There are 6 people on the other side. We have to end it quickly. Nietian transmitted the holographic projection to Long Aoyin and Linling. This battle could not be dragged on. It had to be resolved quickly. Otherwise, it would attract more Snow God Imperial Guards. That would be terrible. Long Aoyin and Linling exchange a glance. Then, they looked at Nietian. Linling, I'll leave the 2 in the middle to you. Leave the 2 in the east and west to Aoyin. The remaining 2 are mine. Nietian thought for a while and transmitted his voice to the 2. Nietian could already tell that Linling's strength was still a little weaker compared to Long Aoyin, so making him deal with 2 together was easier. Long Aoyin would deal with the 2 people closer, while the remaining 2 people furthest away would be dealt with by Nietian himself. Linling gave Nietian a glance in puzzlement. The latter's strength was only 7th level Heavenly Emperor. Could he kill a 9th level Heavenly Emperor martial artist? Relax. Nietian smiled faintly. A hint of killing intent curled up at the corners of his mouth, and he spat out 2 words, "Do it." Rumble, rumble, rumble. In an instant, the 3 people's figures moved at the same time. 3 terrifying auras surged up, directly speeding over towards the dense forest. Meteor wings appeared behind Nietian. His speed was actually the fastest among the 3 people. In just a blink of an eye, his figure already arrived above the dense forest several tens of thousands of meters away. There's someone. At virtually the same time, a surprised voice came out from inside the dense forest. Following that, 2 figures appeared in the void. It was precisely 2 Snow God Imperial Guards. Nietian's divine sense moved, sweeping past the 2 people, and he said in his heart, "Indeed, 9th level Heavenly Emperor strength." The Snow God Imperial Guards were well deserving of being the head of the Heaven Realm's 4 great divine guards. Any 2 of them were 9th level Heavenly Emperor strength. Trespassing into the Heaven Realm's forbidden land, courting death. Those 2 people exchanged a glance, gave a deep roar, and turned into 2 streams of flowing light, directly attacking over towards Nietian. Amen. Nietian's brows furrowed slightly, his gaze glued onto one of them. Both wings shook, and he swooped over. Just as the distance between Nietian and that person was only several hundred meters, absolute confinement activated. A massive mental pressure howled out, enveloping over in an earth-shattering manner. Ark! That person was struck by the invisible mental pressure and cried out miserably, his divine sense instantly losing control. The absolute confinement fused with absolute tremor and holographic confinement. Even 9th level Heavenly Emperor martial artists were unable to resist it too. Die! Nie Tianling laughed, the origin reversing netherblade attacking. A sword stabbed out, a murderous sword shadow whistled past, directly obliterating that person on the spot, leaving no bones behind. When the other person saw the situation, he was considerably frightened, his body that was still in midair involuntarily turning sluggish. Nietian suddenly turned around, seizing that instant of opportunity. Both wings shook. Darkstar ghostly carnage unleashed. Coupled with the proud sword art's sword move, a black sword shadow rolled out, the speed swift to the extreme, a berserk killing aura spreading out. Ark! A miserable cry sounded out. That person's figure directly flew out backward, smashing down toward the ground. In an instant, Nietian attacked with all his strength, instantly killing 2 9th level Heavenly Emperor martial artists. Rumble. But right at this time, a rumble came from above the sky. A streak of white light appeared, instantly exploding in the air. Chapter 1277. When Nietian saw the white light in the sky, he immediately reacted. It was the Snow God's Forbidden Guard's warning signal. Bastard! Almost at the same time, Long Aoyin roared and struck out with his palm. A black bone claw appeared and killed the martial artist who sent out the warning signal. With Long Aoyin's strength, it was not a problem for him to deal with 10 Snow God's Forbidden Guards at the same time. Unfortunately, the two snow gods' forbidden guard were too far away, and he could not kill them instantly. One of them sent out the warning signal. Oh no! Lin Ling's figure flashed and came to Nie Tian's side. He panicked and said, "My lord, the warning signal has been sent out. The snow god's forbidden guards will be here soon. Let's leave first." The snow god forbidden guards were very strong. If dozens of them came at the same time, Nie Tian and the others would be in danger. "We can't leave." Nie Tian's eyes trembled, but he said, "Where's the secret passage? Take me there." Nie Tian was very calm. If they left now, they would not have another chance. Qian Xinyu must have known that the snow god's forbidden guards were killed. If someone wanted to enter the demon-swallowing abyss, he would definitely strengthen the protection. It might even alert the Snow Emperor. At that time, it would be almost impossible to enter the demon-swallowing abyss. Therefore, this was Nie Tian's only chance to enter the demon-swallowing abyss. He had to seize it. "My lord, that secret passage is guarded by a terrifying restriction. Even a peak Heavenly Emperor expert would not be able to break it in a short time. We can't enter." Lin Ling said nervously. He originally planned to kill all the snow gods' forbidden guards and then slowly find a way to break the restriction. Now that he was facing such a situation, it was very bad. "We can't care too much. Let's go take a look at the secret passage first." Nie Tian's eyes turned cold as he said in a deep voice. If the secret passage was guarded by a restriction, Nie Tian believed that he would have a way to break it, but it would take some time. "All right." Lin Ling saw that Nie Tian was determined and could only agree. His figure moved and flew into the depths of the forest. Nie Tian and Long Outyin quickly followed. The three of them were extremely fast. In a short moment, they arrived in front of cliff. "That cave is the entrance to the secret passage." Lin Ling pointed at a cave on the cliff and said nervously. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he scanned the cave with his holographic rune. Indeed, he could feel a terrifying restriction enveloping the cave. "Big brother, can you break the restriction?" Long Outyin had a guilty look on his face. After all, it was because he was too slow, causing that person to send out the warning signal. Nie Tian's face was gloomy. He carefully sensed the barrier outside the cave and drew a holographic projection bit by bit. He had to draw a holographic projection of the entire restriction in order to find the weakness of the restriction, just like how he had broken the restriction of the secluded forest in the abyss of chaos. But this restriction in front of him was very strange and complex. Nie Tian had to spend a lot of time to sense each restriction rune. If he wanted to carve the entire restriction, he would need at least several minutes. "Who are you? How dare you trespass into the demon-devouring abyss?" However, at this time, there was a violent roar in the sky. Dozens of figures appeared, each with a powerful aura. They were basically ninth-level heavenly emperors. "Oh no, the snow god's forbidden guards are here." Lin Ling's face sank as he could not help but feel nervous. Nie Tian also frowned. He did not expect the snow god's forbidden guards to come so quickly. "Outyin, Lin Ling, stop them. I need some time." Nie Tian instantly calmed down and said solemnly. Things had already come to this point. There was no turning back. He could only brace himself and continue. As long as he could draw a holographic projection of the restriction, Nie Tian was confident that he could break the restriction. "Big brother, don't worry. With me, Long Outyin, around, these shitty forbidden guards won't be able to take half a step closer." Long Outyin's aura rose as the Dragon Slayer appeared in his hand. The saber chi surged, filled with terrifying killing intent. Lin Ling's Sword of Origin appeared in his hand as he released sword intent from his body. Nie Tian did not look at the two as he focused on carving the holographic projection. "Commander Lin, it's actually you." The leader's aura was very powerful, almost no weaker than Long Outyin and Lin Ling. He recognized Lin Ling at a glance and could not help but be slightly surprised. "So what if it's me?" Lin Ling smiled cold. At this point, there was no need for him to hide anything. He recognized that this person was one of the two vice commanders of the Snow God's Forbidden Guards, Yang Lai. Lin Ling, The Daybreak Emperor asked you to guard the demon-swallowing city. How dare you bring people into the demon-swallowing abyss? How should you be punished? Yang Lai scolded cold, releasing a terrifying flame aura around him. The air was filled with a scorching aura. The Daybreak Emperor framed the Lord Battle God. I will not listen to his orders in the future. Lin Ling replied in a deep voice, deliberately stalling for time. Is that so? Yang Lai's eyes flashed with killing intent. He moved instantly and attacked Lin Ling directly. A line of fire appeared in the air and instantly filled the air with a sea of fire, rolling over like a huge wave. You're courting death. Long Outyin saw this and roared. He slashed down with the Dragon Slayer. A huge blade shadow appeared and directly split the sea of fire in half. Attack! Yang Lai's eyes darkened as he shouted angrily to the people behind him. As soon as he finished speaking, the dozens of snow gods' imperial guards behind Yang Lai simultaneously unleashed their violent auras, which connected into one. The space was instantly compressed, and the wind and clouds changed color. Like a dark cloud, they pressed down on Nietian and the others. Lin Ling, you protect Big Brother. I'll kill this group of bastards. Long Outyin cold smiled and roared. He stomped his feet and rushed over. He knew that if these snow gods' forbidden guards attacked together, even he would not be able to resist. So, he had to break the formation of the snow gods' forbidden guards. Be careful, Master Long. Lin Ling did not expect Long Outyin to dare to rush over. He screamed, but did not move. He had to ensure Nietian's safety. You don't know what's good for you. Yang Lai saw Long Outyin rush up alone, and his eyes trembled. He slapped down, and a huge flaming palm appeared. The sky seemed to be burning. Try my 8 desolated ghost bone. Long Outyin chuckled and threw a punch. Ghostly chi from all over the place gushed out like a raging storm. A black shadow of a fist appeared, and the violent aura was extremely frightening. The space around it trembled. Boom! In the void, the huge flaming palm and the black fist shadow collided. After a loud bang, the huge flaming palm was torn apart by the 8 desolated ghost chi. Yang Lai saw this, and his eyes trembled slightly. Apparently, he did not expect Long Outyin to be so strong. He moved and dodged to the side. The other snow gods' forbidden guards went up together and blocked the black fish shadow with their aura. Let's kill one first. However, at this time, Long Outyin rushed over and locked his eyes on one of the snow gods' forbidden guards. The Dragon Slayer slashed out violently, and the rolling blade bloomed. A terrifying blade light appeared like a roaring beast and rushed over. Chapter 1278. This, Yang Lai and the rest saw the tragic scene in the air and could not help but tremble violently. They did not expect that Long Outyin's strength was actually more terrifying than Lin Ling's. Ha! A bunch of trash. Go to hell for your grandpa. Long Outyin killed one person with one slash, and his fighting spirit became even stronger. Both his eyes became blood red, revealing an extremely violent killing intent. Kill him, Yang Lai bellowed, in front of the snow god imperial guards. How could they allow others to be insolent? Dozens of snow god imperial guard attacked at the same time, a terrifying aura linked together, pressing over with the force of toppling mountains and overturning seas, roaring and roaring, incomparably terrifying. Lord Long, watch out! Lin Ling saw the situation and exclaimed. These snow god imperial guards were usually well-trained, with tacit understanding. Their aura fused together. The power of this attack was not much weaker than a peak Heavenly Emperor martial artist's all-out attack. Good move. But Long Outyin was arrogant to the extreme, and it was impossible for him to retreat. The 8 Desolation Ghost Bone released a terrifying 8 Desolation Ghost Chi, spreading around his body, enveloping his entire person. In an instant, the 8 Desolation Ghost Chi condensed into a skeleton shadow in the void, several thousand meters large, very terrifying. Kill! Long Outyin roared, the skeleton shadow punching over. The space trembled violently, between heaven and earth was filled with a cold and gloomy aura. The 8 Desolation Ghost Bone was one of the 4 great profound arms. The power contained within it was unimaginable. Long Out Yin's 8 Desolation Ghost Bone, after absorbing the power of the Yin Corpse curse mark, its gloomy aura was even more terrifying. Rumble. 2 terrifying forces collided in the void. An ear-piercing roar sounded. Heaven and earth seemed to become turbulent. Dozens of Snow God Imperial Guards actually took a step back, unable to withstand Long Out Yin's full-strength punch. Previously, Long Out Yin had used the 8 Desolation Ghost Bone to clash head-on with Dong Wang. It could be seen how terrifying the 8 Desolation Ghost Bone was. Although the combined strength of dozens of Snow God Imperial Guards was terrifying, but compared to Dong Wang, one of the 9 emperors, it was still slightly inferior. Long Out Yin had gained the upper hand in one move and was immediately overjoyed. His figure rushed forward, and the dragon slaying slashed down violently. An incomparably tyrannical blade shadow appeared in the void and directly scattered the dozens of Snow God Imperial Guards. What terrifying power! Seeing this, Lin Ling's heart couldn't help but shudder. He didn't expect Long Out Yin's strength to be so terrifying. No wonder he was called the #1 madman. He did have the capital to be arrogant. At this time, Nie Tian was focused on drawing the holographic projection. His forehead was covered in sweat, and his face was slightly pale. This restriction was even more complicated than he had imagined. It was extremely difficult to carve, and it consumed a large amount of essence, force, and mental energy. Lin Ling guarded Nie Tian from the side, not letting anyone get close. Long Out Yin was fighting with Yang Lai and the rest, and although he had suffered some injuries, he had also killed a few Snow God Imperial Guards. Finally done. After a moment, Nie Tian's closed eyes suddenly opened, and his face revealed a touch of joy. There was already a holographic projection in his mind. In just an instant, Nie Tian immediately sensed the weakness of the restriction. The corner of his mouth curled up into a smile, and his figure moved, standing in midair. His body began to release a vast and mighty dragon chi. The purple-gold dragon chi spread out, and a sea of lightning appeared, and the dragon chi became thicker and thicker. This restriction was very strong. Even if Nie Tian found the weakness, he still needed to use the power of the dragon vein to break the restriction. Yang Lai saw Nie Tian's figure at this time, and felt the violent dragon chi spreading in the air. Suddenly, he thought of something, and his face changed. He shouted in shock, "Kill that silver-haired martial artist." Yang Lai suddenly realized that Nie Tian wanted to break the restriction and enter the demonic devouring abyss. His figure moved, and a pair of 100-meter-long flaming wings appeared on his back. His entire body was like a ball of flame, and he directly rushed towards Nie Tian. Don't even think about it. At this critical moment, Lin Ling's voice rang out, and the long sword in his hand stabbed out. The sharp sword intent released a terrifying power, and a sword shadow appeared in midair, forcibly blocking Yang Lai's path. Damn it! Yang Lai cursed, and looked at Lin Ling fiercely, and said, "Lin Ling, you have no idea what is in the demonic devouring abyss. If you let him enter, you will regret it. If I let you hurt him, I will regret it even more." Lin Ling said cold and blocked Yang Lai. At this time, Nie Tian had already condensed a purple-gold giant dragon. Its 2,000-meter-long body appeared, and the dragon's aura surged for tens of thousands of meters, and a shocking dragon roar shook the heaven and earth. "Break for me," Nie Tian murmured, and the purple-gold giant dragon under his feet rolled out and directly rushed towards the restriction on the cliff. "No!" Seeing this, Yang Lai shouted, but it was already too late. Rumble. The purple-gold giant dragon collided with the invisible restriction, and a terrifying roar sounded. The mountain suddenly shook, as if it was about to collapse. Crack! At this moment, a crisp sound rang out. It was as if an invisible barrier had cracked. In Nie Tian's holographic projection, there was a huge crack on the restriction of the cave. The purple gold giant dragon's powerful attack did not destroy the restriction, and only caused a crack. Out Yin Lin Ling, let's go. But a crack was enough for Nie Tian, and he shouted, ready to enter the cave. Big brother, I'm coming. Long Out Yin let out a wild laugh as he punched out, forcing the snow god's guards back. Then, his figure blurred into motion as he charged towards Nie Tian. Lin Ling was closer to Nie Tian, and his figure flashed, and he flashed over. How can the demonic devouring abyss be so easy to pass? However, at this moment, in the sky, a surging voice suddenly sounded, and a terrifying aura rolled over. Boom! The void trembled, the space tightened, and a blood-red curtain of rain appeared, condensing into a giant blood-red hand, like a collapsing mountain, pressing down on Long Out Yin. Lord Commander, seeing this scene, Yang Lai could not help but tremble, and he shouted, Qian Xinyu. Lin Ling also sensed something, and shouted a name in shock. Stay here for me. A surging voice sounded, and a figure in black descended like a demon, pressing down on them with a domineering aura. It was none other than the commander of the Heavenly Snow Guards, Qian Xinyu. I'll leave you here. Facing Qian Xinyu's fatal attack, Long Out Yin was not afraid. Ghost Bone of 8 Desolation struck again, and with a punch, Ghost Chi condensed into a black fist shadow and shot up to the sky. Kaboom! The moment the fist and the palm collided, there was a loud bang, and the black fist shadow instantly collapsed, and the giant blood-red hand directly pressed down on Long Out Yin. Pung! With a muffled sound, Long Out Yin was hit directly, and his figure was like a kite with a broken string, flying diagonally, drawing a bloody trail in the air. Out Yin! The sudden scene caught Nie Tian unprepared, and when he reacted, he shouted, and his figure immediately moved, flying towards Long Out Yin. Chapter 1279. Long Out Yin was severely injured by Qian Xinyu's palm. When Nie Tian saw this scene, he cried out and flew over. Nie Tian's figure was extremely fast, like a stream of flowing light, directly arriving beside Long Out Yin and hugging him. Proud heaven! When Nie Tian saw that Long Out Yin already fell unconscious, his entire body dripping with blood, his complexion as white as paper, his heart involuntarily trembled. His divine sense swept over and detected that Long Out Yin still had a trace of weak breathing. Only then did he relax a little. Qian Xinyu was too terrifying. It seemed like the power of one palm was even more terrifying than Dongwang. Long Out Yin expended a large amount of essence energy in the great battle previously. How could he withstand Qian Xinyu's palm head-on? Mn. Only when Qian Xinyu saw Nie Tian appear did he place his attention on the latter. Following that, he glanced at the restrictions on the cliff cave, and his brows involuntarily furrowed. Following that, he actually smiled playfully and said, a mere 7th-level Heavenly Emperor martial artist can actually break the Fiend's ceiling restriction. A little interesting. Very clearly, Qian Xinyu did not see through Nie Tian's true identity. Your Excellency. At this time, Lin Ling cried out in shock, his expression ugly to the extreme. He did not expect that this place actually startled Qian Xinyu. The latter coming personally, they did not have any chance of survival. Long Out Yin was the strongest among the three and still could not withstand Qian Xinyu's palm, let alone Lin Ling and Nie Tian. Lin Ling, you go in first. Nie Tian looked at Lin Ling and transmitted a stream of divine sense over, letting the latter enter the abyss's dark path first. The Fiend's ceiling restriction was very powerful. Nie Tian's Dragon Vein attack just now only punched out a gap. Now, the gap was slowly shrinking and would close up very soon. Once the Fiend ceiling restriction recovered, Nie Tian and the rest would really have no way out to heaven and no door to hell. Your Excellency. Lin Ling did not know what Nie Tian wanted to do and called out painfully. Believe me, but Nie Tian's eyes were very resolute as he gave a deep roar. Lin Ling's gaze shook violently, and he calmed down in the end. His figure flashed, and he intended to fly towards the devil ceiling restriction. Stop him! Qian Shenyu cried out in alarm. There was a trace of panic on his face. The people within the demonic engulfing abyss were extremely terrifying. Apart from the Snow Empress, no one else could see them. Qian Shenyu's body trembled, and a terrifying aura rose from his back. The surroundings immediately darkened, as if a storm was coming. The air became dense and gloomy, giving off an extremely strong sense of oppression. Lin Ling felt that the space was filled with terrifying resistance, and it actually made him feel like he couldn't move an inch. What a terrifying barrier power! Nie Tian frowned. He immediately sensed that Qian Shenyu had released a terrifying barrier that enveloped the surrounding tens of thousands of meters. Qian Shenyu's primordial spirit attribute was very common. It was the water attribute. However, it was slightly mutated. It was much stronger than ordinary water attribute cultivators. Can you stop it? Nie Tian's face darkened. Boundless starlight appeared behind him, and the power of the stars was fully unleashed. The heaven-shrouding boundary appeared again, and it met Qian Shenyu's boundary head-on. The twinkling starlight was like the sun, dispelling the darkness, and the space suddenly became much clearer. Lin Ling felt the pressure around him instantly lessen. He was delighted, and he flew towards the dark abyss. Qian Shenyu's eyes suddenly darkened. He didn't expect Nie Tian's strength to be so strange that he could even resist his heavy rain boundary. Yang Lai, what are you waiting for? Kill them for me. Qian Shenyu roared, and was the first to rush over. His entire body was enveloped in a curtain of rain, and the bloody curtain of water was like a surging wave of blood that pressed towards Nie Tian. No one could enter the demonic engulfing abyss. Qian Shenyu was already furious at this moment. Blood devours the firmament. Nie Tian felt the surging pressure coming towards him. Blood chi rolled out from his body, and he stabbed out with the reverse blade of darkness. The blood chi and sword intent condensed into a blood-colored sword shadow that roared and pounced forward. Boom! With a loud explosion, the blood-colored sword shadow collided head-on with the curtain of rain around Qian Shenyu, but the latter's figure only froze for a moment, without causing any damage. Nie Tian's strength was still too weak to pose a threat to Qian Shenyu. You're Nie Tian. Almost in an instant, Qian Shenyu sensed something and exclaimed. His pupils shrank violently, and he was extremely shocked. Although he didn't have much interaction with Nie Tian, he had secretly seen Nie Tian in action. The sword just now was clearly Nie Tian's proud sword skills' forbidden move. Qian Shenyu, you're not that stupid after all. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of Nie Tian's mouth, but there was no fear on his face. Instead, there was an extremely violent, murderous intent. He had been waiting for this moment. Absolute confinement. In an instant, Nie Tian launched absolute confinement. A majestic spiritual deterrence whizzed out, and the void trembled slightly. Boom! Qian Shenyu felt an explosion in his head, and actually made his divine sense shudder in that instant, and his eyes glazed slightly. Go! Nie Tian seized the opportunity, and the wings behind him flapped. At the same time, he released endless power of stars around him, and the heavenly star protection enveloped him. Absolute confinement temporarily distracted Qian Shenyu, but this was only for a moment. Nie Tian was not naive enough to want to kill Qian Shenyu. A peak celestial emperor martial artist was definitely not so easy to kill. If Nie Tian's dragon vein was still in peak condition, he might have a chance if he attacked with all his might. But now, if he attacked, he would be seeking his own death. Since Qian Shenyu was by the Snow Emperor's side, there was no need to doubt his strength. Encountering this person, Nie Tian could only run for his life at this moment. Boom! 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 Almost at the same time, endless attacks pressed down on Nie Tian from behind. Fortunately, his figure was extremely fast, but he was still hit by several attacks. Just as the demon ceiling restriction was about to close, Nie Tian's figure flashed, and he entered the cave. The demon ceiling restriction instantly closed, blocking all the attacks. These Snow God Imperial Guards could not see the weakness of the demon ceiling restriction, and naturally could not break it. And even if they could, they might not dare to enter. Just as Nietian entered the cave, Qianxinyu instantly recovered and immediately understood everything. He had suffered the mental attack of Nietian's absolute confinement, but could actually recover in an instant. It could be seen how strong his mental fortitude was. Damn it! Qianxinyu knew that Nietian and the others had already entered the demonic devouring abyss, and he roared in a low voice, his entire body trembling, releasing a terrifying rage. The other snow god Imperial Guards retreated when they saw this scene. They knew that when Qianxinyu was enraged, he would kill. Qianxinyu stared coldly at the demon's ceiling restriction, unable to speak for a long time. He did not expect that the silver-haired youth was actually Nietian, and that his strength was so strange that a mental attack had instantly stunned him. Lord Commander. At this time, Yang Lai saw that Qianxinyu had calmed down and stepped forward, his voice trembling. At this time, Yang Lai also understood that no wonder Lin Ling would help that silver-haired youth. The latter was actually Nietian. A bunch of trash. Qianxinyu looked cold at Yang Lai. If not for the latter's strength, he would definitely have killed him to vent his anger. Lord Commander, what do we do now? Yang Lai gulped and asked shakily. Inform Lord Snow Emperor. Qianxinyu replied cold, and his figure moved and disappeared. Chapter 1280. In the cave, the light was dim, and the path was deep. Nietian stood in the cave and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Qianxinyu and the rest had left. Is Master Long all right? Lin Ling also heaved a sigh of relief and asked worriedly when he saw that Long Outyin was still unconscious. Nietian laid Long Outyin flat on the ground and used his divine sense to sense the latter's aura. Although it was weak, it was still stable, and at least there was no danger. Fortunately, he has the 8 Desolation Ghost Bone, and it blocked most of the damage from Qianxinyu's palm. Nietian smiled faintly and muttered to himself after confirming that Long Outyin's life was not in danger. Long Outyin was very arrogant and took Qianxinyu's attack head-on. Otherwise, he would have been dead. Nietian did not have a rank 9 spirit pill and could only take out some ordinary spirit pills for Long Outyin to consume. After a while, Long Outyin slowly woke up, and his complexion improved a little. Big brother, where are we? Long Outyin stood up and looked at the dark surroundings with a puzzled expression. We're already in the secret passage to the demonic devouring abyss. Nietian smiled faintly. Long Outyin was still very weak and would need at least a few days to recover completely. Where's Qianxinyu? Long Outyin reacted and asked in shock. He's already left. Nietian nodded faintly, but there was a little worry on his face. He had heard what Qianxinyu said before he left, and the latter had gone to report to the Snow Empress. I wonder if the Snow Empress will come personally? Nietian thought to himself, and his brow furrowed. If the Snow Empress came personally, it would not be so easy for them to leave the demonic devouring abyss. Let's not care about that for now. Let's enter the abyss and meet Qi Wuxi Ocean. Nietian smiled faintly. Since they had successfully entered, of course they had to see Qi Wuxi Ocean. Nietian risked his life to come to the demonic devouring abyss, and he hoped that Qi Wuxi Ocean would not disappoint him. The 3 of them stopped talking and walked along the cave. Moments later, Nietian felt that the space-time pressure was getting heavier. It seemed that he was already close to the demonic devouring abyss. Within the demonic devouring abyss, the continents were crumbling and space-time was destroyed. There were space-time vortexes everywhere in the sky. It was extremely dangerous. Soon, the passageway in front of him gradually became bigger, and the space-time pressure became heavier. Nietian and the others arrived at the end of the path. It was a cliff, and below the cliff was a bottomless abyss. It was as if an enormous monster was waiting for them to enter with its mouth wide open. Below us is the devouring devil abyss. Nietian looked at the bottomless abyss beneath his feet and frowned involuntarily. The danger of the demonic devouring abyss was much more terrifying than he had imagined. If they entered from the sky, they would definitely be devoured by the space-time vortex. In the sky above the abyss, There were space-time vortexes everywhere, all of them lurking in the void. If one was the slightest bit careless, they would be directly devoured. "Big brother, let's go in." Long Out Yin recovered a little and said excitedly, "Follow behind me." Nietion nodded and said solemnly. They were at a low altitude above the demonic devouring abyss, but they could not guarantee that there would be no space-time vortexes. Long Out Yin and Lin Ling both nodded solemnly. This was not a joke. If they were not careful, they would be doomed eternally. Nietion let out a deep breath and took a step forward, directly stepping into the abyss. His divine sense spread out completely, and the holographic divine prince sensed the aura in the space. He did not dare to be careless. In Nietion's mind, he could clearly see the space-time vortexes surging into space. It was like a monster lurking there, about to go berserk at any time. Nietion avoided the space-time vortexes, and his figure gradually descended. At a lower altitude, there were obviously fewer space-time vortexes. Nietion increased his speed, and after an unknown period of time, he suddenly felt that the space below had become much heavier. He knew that he had already reached the bottom of the abyss. "We're here." Arriving at the bottom of the abyss, Nietion's expression was much more relaxed, and his divine sense spread out in all directions. The surrounding environment was very dim, and the space was filled with dense fog, making it difficult to open one's eyes. "Is this the demonic devouring abyss?" Long Out Yin chuckled, and he seemed very excited. "Long Out Yin, you're right. This is the demonic devouring abyss." Just as he finished speaking, a cold and deep voice suddenly sounded, resonating in the bottom of the abyss, causing the earth to tremble. "Who's there?" Long Out Yin was taken aback, and he was quite surprised. Clatter, clatter. In the next moment, what answered Long Out Yin was a clear and deep sound of iron chains being pulled. Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly, and he immediately felt a familiar aura. It was the aura of the 9 underworld's demon king, Qi Wu Xiaotian. It was obvious that the voice just now came from Qi Wu Xiaotian. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Following that, a violent rumble sounded, and the ground was actually torn apart by several enormous forces. It was directly lifted up, and the air was instantly filled with rubble. "What's going on?" Long Out Yin hadn't figured out the situation, and he was quite shocked, and he couldn't help but cry out, "Nietion, you really didn't let me down. You really came here." The cold and deep voice sounded again, and the ground cracked even more thoroughly. In the thick fog, several huge black iron chains appeared, and they were like many giant snakes that stood up, dancing wildly in the air. Bang! At this moment, a figure whistled out from the ground, and it caused a wave of earth to soar into the sky, and it rushed dozens of meters into the sky. Nietion raised his head slightly, and he saw a tall and sturdy figure standing in the air, and his body was releasing a strange black aura, and he seemed very domineering. "Qi Wu Xiaotian, it really is you." When he saw the figure clearly, Nietion smiled slightly, and he spoke indifferently. The person in front of him was none other than the legendary 9 underworld demon emperor, Qi Wu Xiaotian. The 9 underworld demon emperor status in the demon world was equivalent to the heaven realm's snow emperor, and it was a supreme existence. The corpse demon monarch was one of the 9 great demon monarchs under Qi Wu Xiaotian. In his previous life, Qi Wu Xiaotian had always wanted to let the demon race return to the heaven realm's god realm, but it was a pity that his strength alone was unable to turn the tide. Back then, he had a life and death battle with Nietion, and after using the demon swallowing sky seal, he disappeared without a trace. He didn't expect that after more than 100 years, Nietion and Qi Wu Xiaotian would actually meet again in the demonic swallowing abyss. At this time, Qi Wu Xiaotian's condition wasn't very good. His body was actually shackled by the iron chains, and 12 black iron chains were like giant snakes, enveloping him and constantly releasing a strange power that surged into Qi Wu Xiaotian's body. Nietion's gaze focused slightly, And then he noticed that the 12 black iron chains were actually inscribed with densely packed tadpole-shaped runes, and black origin energy surged on them, and they emitted a gloomy and ruthless aura. Chi Wu Xiaotian, looks like you've indeed been imprisoned by the Snow Emperor. Nie Tian immediately understood, and he spoke indifferently. These 12 black iron chains were used to imprison Chi Wu Xiaotian. Chapter 1281. At the bottom of the demonic, devouring abyss, Chi Wuxiaoshan suddenly became enraged. His deep roar shook heaven and earth, like a clap of thunder exploding in the abyss. Nie Tian focused his gaze and said coldly, "Demon King, what do you mean?" Chi Wuxiaoshan was obviously imprisoned here by the Snow Empress. What did that have to do with Nie Tian? Mo Jiuyo, don't spout nonsense. What does your imprisonment by the Snow Empress have to do with my brother? Long Outyin couldn't help but interject and shout. Chi Wuxiaoshan was the Demon King of the Netherworld, so he was also called Mo Jiuyo. Nothing to do with it. Chi Wuxiaoshan laughed cold and shouted furiously, "You forced me to use the devil-devouring seal when we fought back then. I was greatly injured." You must have been injured then, right? Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he nodded. Honestly speaking, Chi Wuxiaoshan should have had the upper hand in the battle back then. Nie Tian was severely injured by the devil-devouring seal, and his vital energy was almost depleted. If he had continued fighting, he would have been in danger. However, Chi Wuxiaoshan had mysteriously disappeared at that time. Nie Tian thought that Chi Wuxiaoshan must have suffered a backlash from using the devil-devouring seal and was severely injured, which was why he had escaped. Nie Tian, you were so injured then. If I had continued to attack, would you have been able to leave alive? Chi Wuxiaoshan said cold. He was evidently furious. Perhaps not. Nie Tian nodded slightly. He indeed didn't have the strength to continue fighting back then. However, he still had a chance to leave if he wanted to, although the chances weren't very high. Chi Wuxiaoshan frowned and stared at Nie Tian viciously as he said cold, "I suddenly disappeared then. Don't you find it strange?" Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and he suddenly understood something. Chi Wuxiaoshan had the chance to kill him, so why would he suddenly leave? Thinking about it this way, Chi Wu Xiaotian must have had an accident at that time. You've been captured by the Snow Empress. Nie Tian suddenly realized what had happened, and exclaimed in astonishment. Nie Tian, you're not that stupid after all. Chi Wuxiaoshan's expression was trembling, and the black chains around his body were shaking even more violently. He was furious as he said, "Despicable Snow Empress. She actually hid herself where we fought, and ambushed me when I was at my weakest." This. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, but he quickly understood everything. It was evident that the Snow Empress had hidden herself while he was fighting Chi Wuxiaoshan, and she had seized the opportunity when Chi Wuxiaoshan was at his weakest. Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he understood all of this, and he was filled with disdain for the Snow Empress' actions. The Snow Empress was one of the 9 Thearchs after all, and she was already a demigod. Even if she were to fight Chi Wuxiaoshan head-on, she would still have a high chance of winning. However, she had resorted to a sneak attack, and that was really despicable. Nie Tian, if not for you, I wouldn't have been ambushed by the Snow Empress, and I wouldn't have been imprisoned in this abyss. Chi Wuxiaoshan was almost deranged, and he roared, "Tell me, isn't it because of you that I'm in such a state?" Nie Tian was a little speechless. Chi Wuxiaoshan's thinking was very interesting. He actually pushed all the blame onto Nie Tian. "Mo Jiuyo, what are you shouting for?" Long Outyin couldn't bear to watch any longer. He shouted, "You and my big brother fought because both parties agreed to it. You and I were willing to do it. As for you being ambushed by the Snow Empress, that's because you weren't careful. What has it got to do with my brother? If you have the ability, go and take revenge on the Snow Empress. Why are you yelling at my brother?" Chi Wuxiaoshan looked at Long Outyin cold, and his face turned gloomy. He gritted his teeth and said, "Snow Empress, you imprisoned me for 100 years. If I don't take revenge, I'm not Chi Wuxiaoshan. As long as I escape from the abyss, I'll make you pay with your blood." Although Chi Wuxian hated Nietian, he hated the Snow Empress even more. After all, the latter was the one who had imprisoned him. Nietian was watching from the side, but he wasn't anxious. Instead, there was a faint smile on his face, and he seemed to be thinking about something. After Chi Wuxian had calmed down, Nietian smiled faintly and said with a playful expression, "Lord Demon Emperor, you didn't spend so much effort to bring me to the demon-devouring abyss just to listen to your complaints, did you?" Chi Wuxian vented all the hatred in his heart when Nietian appeared, and he pushed everything onto Nietian. On the surface, it seemed like he was venting his anger, but it was actually a tactic. Chi Wuxian wanted to make Nietian feel guilty. It was a pity that Nietian didn't feel guilty. Instead, he was very happy. Wasn't it a pleasure to see the Demon Emperor in such a pitiful state? Nietian guessed that the man in black who had informed him to come here must be one of Chi Wuxian's men. Perhaps Chi Wuxian and that person had some special way of contacting each other. Chi Wuxian must have a request for Nietian to come here. "Nietian, it was you who caused this emperor to end up like this. Don't you want to save this emperor?" Chi Wuxian said coldly. Nietian raised his eyebrow, but he didn't deny it. He said directly, "Chi Wuxian, let's skip this and talk about the conditions." Nietian didn't have time to waste with Chi Wuxian. It was better to get straight to the point. "All right." Chi Wuxian was stunned for a moment. Then he said solemnly, "Help me escape, and I'll help you get rid of the Saint Brand and the girl beside you." "How about it? It really is the Saint Brand." Nietian frowned suddenly, and his expression turned cold. He said solemnly, "The Saint Brand in my wife's body was left by you?" The Sword Elder said that the person who left the Saint Brand in Mo Rushi's body was a pinnacle heavenly emperor, and the brand contained a wave of evil energy. Chi Wuxian met all these conditions. No. Unexpectedly, Chi Wuxian denied it directly and said, "If I'm not wrong, the Saint Brand in that girl's body should be left by the Snow Empress." Snow Empress. Nietian's eyes trembled. He had also suspected the Snow Empress, but he didn't have any proof. "The Snow Empress learned the Saint Brand from me. Do you think he came to the demonic devouring abyss every once in a while to have a heart-to-heart talk with me?" Chi Wuxian said cold, suppressing the anger in his heart. The Snow Empress had imprisoned him here and would come over every once in a while because she wanted to obtain something from him. In order to avoid torture, Chi Wuxian would occasionally reveal some things to the Snow Empress. The Saint Brand was learned by the Snow Empress from him. Nietian stood where he was, his body trembling slightly, and it took a long time for him to calm down. "Who was that man in black?" Suddenly, Nietian asked. "He is the Shura sect leader, and, at the same time, the Shura demon lord under me," Chi Wuxian said indifferently, and the corner of his mouth curled into a cold smile. He said, "The Snow Empress definitely didn't expect that I left a chess piece by his side. Humph, this hidden pawn will definitely take his life." As expected, Nietian's heart sank, and everything became much clearer. Chi Wuxian was imprisoned in the demonic devouring abyss, but he still knew so many things. The Shura sect leader must have told him, but there was still one thing that Nietian did not understand. Why did Chi Wuxian let him come to the demonic devouring abyss? What made Chi Wuxian so sure that Nietian could save him? "Chi Wuxian, are you so confident that I can save you?" Nietian looked at Chi Wuxian with a burning gaze and said in a low voice. Chapter 1282. Demon God, Nascent Embryo. Suddenly hearing these 4 words from Chi Wuxian's mouth, Nietian's eyes trembled violently and his expression stiffened. He was stunned on the spot. He didn't think that Chi Wuxian would know about the demon god, Nascent Embryo. Nietian originally thought that only the Lu Motu knew about the demon god, Nascent Embryo. He didn't think that Chi Wuxian would also know. Chi Wuxian was definitely not the person behind the Lu Motu, because the two of them were not the same people. Although Chi Wuxian and the Lu Motu were both from the demon race, the two of them came from different demon realms of the 9 underworlds. Although the Lu Motu was called the Crimson Flame Devil Monarch, he was not Chi Wuxioshin's subordinate. Moreover, the Lu Motu had said that the person behind him was not from the heaven realm of the gods. Nie Tian, looking at your reaction, you already know your identity. Chi Wuxioshin saw the stunned expression on Nie Tian's face, but he still faintly smiled and said, "Actually, when the Azura Devil Monarch told this emperor that you were killed by Luo Chenhun, this emperor already knew that you would be reborn. I just didn't think that you would be reborn so quickly. This emperor thought that in this life, I would never have the chance to see you again." Nie Tian's eyes flashed. He stared closely at Chi Wuxioshin and asked, "Chi Wuxioshin, how do you know about the demon god nascent embryo?" Nie Tian, "The truth is very cruel. Do you really want to know?" Chi Wuxioshin's expression suddenly became cold. His whole body was actually trembling. "Tell me." Nie Tian nodded solemnly. He suddenly realized that what Chi Wuxioshin was about to say was very likely to be very explosive. "Nie Tian, I'll ask you again. Do you really want to know?" Chi Wuxioshin suddenly calmed down. The black iron chains around him became still, and the atmosphere became extremely oppressive. "I must know." Nie Tian's eyes were as deep as water. No matter what the truth was, he wanted to know. "Good." Chi Wuxioshin suddenly let out a strange cry. Then he sneered and said, "Since the heavens have allowed us to meet under these circumstances, I will tell you the truth." As soon as he finished speaking, Chi Wuxioshin suddenly waved his hand. An array of black light appeared, enveloping Long Out Yin and Lin Ling obviously. He didn't want others to hear his conversation with Nie Tian. Nie Tian, after blocking Long Out Yin and Lin Ling, Chi Wuxioshin let out a long breath and said, "You still don't know who your mother is, right? This empress will tell you now. Your mother is called Chi Wu Yunxiu." Chi Wu. Hearing this name, Nie Tian's face darkened and his whole body froze. According to his knowledge, Chi Wu was the surname of the 9th Hell Empress. His mother was called Chi Wu Yunxiu. Could she be a member of the Jiu Yu royal family? Could it be that the 9 Nether Imperial clan was from the same clan as Chi Wuxioshin? Have you guessed anything? Chi Wuxioshin's eyes were like torches, and he said quietly, "Who is my mother?" Nie Tian forcefully suppressed the shock in his heart and said in a deep voice. Vaguely, he had a guess in his heart, but he didn't dare to say it out loud. "She is the holy maiden of the 9th Hell Demon Realm, and also, Chi Wuxioshin's face darkened, and his voice even trembled. "Or what?" Nie Tian's eyes trembled violently, and he asked in shock. "She is my only sister." Chi Wuxioshin finally spoke, and when he said these words, his whole body trembled uncontrollably. "That's impossible." Nie Tian's first reaction was that it was absolutely impossible. His mother was Chi Wuxioshin's sister, which meant that Chi Wuxioshin was his biological uncle. He could accept that his mother was the holy maiden of the 9th Hell Demon Realm, but he couldn't accept that the person in front of him was his uncle. In his previous life, Nie Tian and Chi Wuxioshin were almost mortal enemies. Otherwise, the two of them wouldn't have fought to the death in the end. Chi Wuxioshin had long expected that Nie Tian would have such a reaction, so he calmed down and said lightly, "I warned you, the truth is cruel. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible." Nie Tian seemed to have gone mad, and he growled in a low voice. At a certain moment, he suddenly raised his head, looked at Chi Wuxioshin, and said, "If you and I are related by blood, why can't I feel it?" The perception of martial artists was very strong, and even if it was a very weak blood relationship, they could still clearly feel it. If Chi Wuxioshin was his uncle, there was no reason that he couldn't feel it. Because your mother left a suppressive force in your body, and it forcibly changed the breath of your bloodline, Chi Wuxioshin said in a deep voice, and there was a trace of helplessness in his eyes. If he had known about the relationship between Nie Tian and himself, how could he have fought the latter to the death? And he wouldn't have been in prison now. Nie Tian was stunned. In fact, he had already noticed something before Chi Wuxioshin spoke, but he was just unwilling to admit it. Chi Wuxioshin's figure stood in the air, quietly looking at Nie Tian. and didn't continue to speak. Ocean, how do you know about this? After a long time, Nyetian calmed down a little. Although he had already begun to admit it, he still raised his doubts. Nyetian. Ocean shook his head slightly, smiled bitterly, and said, "When you and I fought to the death, this emperor used the demonic devouring seal to create the current demonic devouring abyss. Don't you think it's strange that you can still survive under such circumstances?" "What do you mean?" Nyetian was stunned. When Ocean used the demonic devouring seal, it was very powerful, and Nyetian felt that he was lucky to survive. But now that Ocean suddenly said it, there seemed to be something fishy. Ocean smiled faintly and said, "When I activated the demonic devouring seal, I sensed the aura of the god-fiend origin embryo in your body, and I also sensed the aura of your bloodline. You only survived because I showed mercy." This, Nyetian's eyes trembled, and his eyes became blurred. "Heaven is making a fool out of me." Ocean had a sorrowful look on his face, and he sighed deeply and said, "If I had known earlier that you were Yunshio's son, I wouldn't have fought to the death with you." The heaven-devouring seal was one of the 10 most powerful sealing marks in the world. When it had been activated, Ocean's perception had reached an unimaginable level. Only at that moment did he realize that Nyetian was his nephew. Ocean wanted to stop, but the seal was already activated, and he couldn't stop it. He could only forcefully reverse the seal to protect Nyetian, but he was severely injured, and the Snow Emperor's sneak attack succeeded. Ocean was the demon emperor of the Netherworld, and his true fighting strength wasn't inferior to the Snow Empress. Although Nyetian was already at his peak, he was still a little inferior to him. Due to a strange combination of factors, the current situation was created. Later, when Ocean heard that Nyetian had been killed by Luo Chenhan, he had thought that he would never see him again, because he had heard that it took 900 years for a fiend god's nascent embryo to be reincarnated. But who would have thought that Nyetian would miraculously reincarnate in just 100 years?